I always love the intro music to this show. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? You're watching SkepTalk on the line. Today is July 24th, 2023, and all of the lines are open if you'd like to call in with a question about God, ancient religions, UFOs, or what are they called now? UPAs? I believe maybe we can get into what UAP. I'm learning new new letters today, or mythicism, which is my favorite topic. If you believe Jesus existed, I'd love to have a conversation with you about why you believe that. And you can call in at 720-619-2288 if you're calling from the US, or if you want to call in from the web, you can find the link in the description. If you don't know me, I'm the Godless Engineer, and today I'm here with Dr. Aron Adair. What's up there, Dr. Adair?
Doing just fine here on the East Coast. Glad to be on the line.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I had a doctorate, I would definitely abuse the title doctor, like Dr. Gleason. Like, don't refer to me as John. I'm Dr. Gleason, motherfucker.
I never felt quite the same way. Even when I was teaching, and I wouldn't force the kids to call me doctor, not even necessarily Mister. Just my policy is just don't call me late for dinner. You can call me anything else.
Well, Aron, do you want to tell everybody, like, kind of who you are, what you do, and I know that you got a couple books that you want to let everybody know about as well.
Yeah. So, background-wise, that doctor thing is supposed to be from earning a PhD in physics from the Ohio State University. I actually just remembered I happen to be wearing my Ohio State T-shirt today. So go Bucks. And if you're not from Ohio, that's okay. I'm originally from Michigan, so technically I'm supposed to hate the school I go to. Most of my time is either in my day job as a data scientist or continuing the research work I did in my PhD work here. I'm in the Boston area, so I also am able to do some research here locally at MIT. And I guess I also moonlight as a historian and Bible scholar. Recently wrote a book co-authored with my friend Jonathan M.S. Pierce, where we talk about, related to maybe things on here today, the idea of aliens. Do they exist? And what are the religious implications? Basically, can you fit them into ancient or modern religions? Or when the aliens land, are we going to start worshiping them? And the new cult of Klaatu begins.
What? Cult of Klaatu?
Klaatu was the name of the alien from the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, science fiction classic. Okay. And also Klaatu, basically as close to being a Jesus figure as you could have in censorious 1950s United States.
Okay. Now,
they literally have him coming down from space, getting killed, and resurrected. If that doesn't sound like Jesus, then you haven't paid attention.
Yeah. Now I'm wondering, have you seen the newer version of that, The Day the Earth Stood Still? I think it's the one with Keanu Reeves, right?
Yes, and classic is better, and as much as I like Keanu Reeves acting, his characterization of there felt even less emotional, even more stiff than Spock is supposed to be. So if that gives you a sense of like emotional range of a Vulcan, here's Klaatu as done by Keanu Reeves. And again, that's not because of the inabilities of Keanu, hardly. It's just that that's what I guess he was directed, and I think that director was wrong.
Okay. Now, I guess the first question that comes to mind before we get to calls, which I think that we still have all lines open. So if y'all want to talk about UFOs or you got any kind of crazy conspiracy theory shit, we'd love to hear about your crazy conspiracy theory thoughts. Those are always fun to explore. But now the first thing that comes to mind for me is, the common idea, the common argument that, well, if Jesus came and died for our sins here, what about for aliens? What do you explore the ramifications of that in your book?
Oh yeah, because there's a history there, and it also even intersects nicely with American history. So the person who probably the most clearly explicated the problem that might have is Thomas Paine. In The Age of Reason, he basically points out, hey, does Jesus need to go and like die at every single planet for all the various species out there that are intelligent? And so do we have a universe filled with billions of Jesuses popping in and out of existence, getting himself killed, coming back, and having to incarnate as other creatures all the time? So is there slug Jesus? Is there echidna Jesus? And all the sorts of other fantasies that we could have in our minds as we have this science fiction setup? Or is there one Jesus to rule them all, one Jesus to bind us? And what are the issues that all that might have? And this is actually not something that like my co-author and I made up. This is actually something that's discussed by theologians that have been doing this for at least a few decades in active paper and book writing.
Okay. So what's your most common response to that? Like that you get from people who, are like, well, no, the Jesus we got is the Jesus that exists. Like what do they say about possible aliens out there? I know one that I normally hear about and get is that, oh, those are demons. But that's just the kind of shit I laugh at.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, well, there's actually two things that kind of intersect here. One with the demons. Depending on when you are looking at the literature, the UFOs that were starting to become popular in the mid-20th century, they're either angels or demons, and it depends on what decade you're looking at. So in like the 60s, especially, Christians might actually identify UFOs as angelic. In fact, there were several books to try to explain the miracles of the Bible with UFOs. One of the books I remember reading was called God and the Flying Saucers, and flying saucers explaining the parting of the Red Sea and Jesus walking on water and all the other sorts of miracles of the Old Testament and New Testament to explain it's like, hey, physics isn't being broken, it's all aliens. And all those other encounters from the Bible, that's all alien stuff. But later on, once the stories of encounters with aliens, the various stories of abductions and usually very negative sexual experiences with extraterrestrials, once that started entering popular culture, then more often the connotation is, oh, these are demonic entities. And so some Christians will say those flying saucers, those are demons, that's Satan flying around. Funny enough as well, a similar thing is happening in the Islamic world, where UFOs might also be said to be piloted by jinn, genies, basically.
Yeah, which I think is the Islamic version of demons, isn't it?
At least very related. I don't know if it's a one-to-one correspondence, but at least it's like, yeah, lesser supernatural entities that if you bump into, they might give you a bad day.
Yeah. Okay. The letters that I mentioned earlier, that's kind of a new acronym, that's the word I'm looking for, acronym, was UAP. Now, we kind of talked about this before the show, but can you kind of tell everybody like what that is and why it's kind of starting to become a preferred way of referring to UFOs?
Yeah, so it's kind of like the new moniker replacing UFO, where UFO was unidentified flying object. UAP is created to say unidentified aerial phenomenon. One, it's a little bit broader because it's not even necessarily an object, it's just a phenomenon. It's not even necessarily flying, it's just up in the sky, basically. But also, it distances itself from all the connotations that UFOs have gotten. Because when a person says, I saw a flying saucer, I saw a UFO, their credibility becomes questionable. But especially in, say, a military context, if you want a pilot coming in and reporting what they've seen and not, just constantly being, laughed out of the mess hall or, being told by their superior officers that you're crazy, this categorization allows a more open and transparent discussion of what they're seeing. Because apparently a lot of pilots come back and they say they see things they can't explain, and that reporting should exist, whether or not it's aliens. I mean, if it's aircraft from, balloons from China, or just, throw out something randomly out there, you want pilots to be able to report that, because it could be a national security risk, or it could just be a flight risk. It could literally be a balloon, but you don't want a balloon going into your jet engine for obvious reasons. So whether or not it's aliens, it's probably good to have these channels that allow pilots and others to report them without taking all that baggage.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that, the conspiracy theorists have been thrown into overdrive with I believe it's Congress that has started investigating like the UFO claims and everything like that. And I'm just wondering, have you seen like a lot of dust up with the like conspiracy theorists like using that at all, like on social media? I don't know if you keep up with that kind of stuff on social media or not.
When I do dip my toes in there and see like conversations happening on Twitter and elsewhere, yeah, there's a lot of people that are very deep down those rabbit holes. But I mean, frankly, government interest in these things is not new. I mean, it's been going on since at least the 1950s. Like J. Edgar Hoover was already like interested in investigating these sorts of things, you know, back then. Project Blue Book is from the 1960s, investigating UFO claims. And there's been decades and decades of government interest. In fact, former Senator Harry Reid was a really big alien enthusiast. And when he was either Senate majority or minority leader, he would also use his weight to try to push around and have funding for research into some of the places that are still big today. So, for example, there's like Skinwalker Ranch out, I forget in which state, but it's claimed to have all sorts of paranormal phenomenon that also relates to UFO stuff. And that was one of the things that Harry Reid was interested in and had some government funding basically go in that direction. More recently, Marco Rubio has at least been willing to say, this ain't crazy, let's talk about it, and so on. It's not even necessarily a partisan thing. Though on the news networks, it's hard to know who actually talked about it more, CNN or Fox, because I remember Tucker Carlson bringing up UFOs a lot while he was still allowed to be on Fox.
Yeah, good old Tucker, that white anyways, so so tonight we do still have all the lines open. We love to talk to y'all about whatever you want to, whether that's, you know, religion and UFOs, or are aliens demons? Maybe we can make that the question for the stream that's not like mythicist related. Are aliens really demons? Because that's one of the big things I see a bunch of religious people going on about. But another thing that you said was that you kind of moonlight as a sort of biblical scholar or historian. Do you want to kind of talk about, you know, what you do with that and everything?
Yeah. So, how many years ago is this now? Man, I'm feeling old. 20 years ago, more or less, I started getting into biblical studies, especially when I was seeing some of the intersections with more scientific approaches to things. Like when I discovered, in particular, I remember listening to some of the audio lectures by Bart Ehrman from about that time and realized, wait, there's actually a systematic way of actually studying these texts. It's not just get on your knees and pray. It's like, okay, this is a whole lot more interesting. This is a lot more my game. And beginning to go down those rabbit holes and, like, you know, start learning some of the languages to approach the subject. And in particular, the thing that was in my wheelhouse, being a physicist and astronomer, was all these attempts to try to explain the Star of Bethlehem story completely in terms of science, or at least the science of antiquity. So astronomy and perhaps astrology as well. That ultimately led to a couple articles. This book that I wrote just about 10 years ago, Star of Bethlehem, A Skeptical View, which basically goes through and says, here's all the explanations that have been attempted over the last 250 years, more or less. Here's why they don't work. Here's why they can't work. And also why we know, for all practical purposes, this is fictional. This is not history. Even if you believe miracles exist and happen all the time, we can still say, this ain't it, Chief. I think that's how I close the book. This ain't it, Chief. And a lot of that, you know, has led, you know, I've gone and presented at some conferences related to this and other things that touch on it. So I've presented a couple times at the Society of Biblical Literature. And I recently wrote myself into probably another book project with my same co-author on the Aliens and Religion book. So Jonathan M. Pierce and I were also now working together on another biblical studies book. And it's forcing me to learn a lot of Hebrew really fast. And actually, it's been quite the adventure so far.
Oh, that sounds pretty cool. I can't wait to get that, because I don't think I have your Star book, but I know that I have your UFO and religions book. So I can't wait for that to, you know, to come out and everything. Now I know I'm a mythicist, and I know that you've been on the show before, but do you want to tell everybody kind of where you stand on that particular question?
Yeah. I definitely find mythicism much more plausible than seems that the Academy itself does. I know there are academics who at least give it the time of day. I think it's more probable than not at this point. But again, also the evidence is just so fantastically ambiguous. If somebody says Jesus exists, I'm like, yeah, totally reasonable. This is not something where there's hard evidence one way or the other. We don't have a letter in the sand from the year 35 that says, now that Jesus, who totally wasn't real, we don't have anything like that. We're not going to find something like that. And with this ambiguousness, it's basically a matter of paradigms and what can we do to explain the most data.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. For most conversations that I have, I definitely concede that ground that I'm willing to start from the position that a man named Jesus is at the very beginning of Christianity for the purposes of talking about various things in Christianity. I though always love to push back a little bit and try, like, how do you know? Because it's really amazing to me that there are plenty of mythicists out there that will make very hardline statements about it that are not based in probability or like what's the most likely answer. But I generally try to get people to think about like, well, how do we know this thing or that thing and everything. So I try to push back on them a little bit, and sometimes it works out. Sometimes I get into months long feud with people that probably shouldn't be a feud.
Yeah. And of course, when the argument's on the internet, it can't go good. No matter how high the ideals might be, what happens on Twitter, well, everything devolves.
Yeah. So we are about to get to our first call. I do want to remind everybody that if you want to do a super chat, like you don't want to call in and ask a question or anything like that, but you still want to get it answered, you can call or you can send a super chat and we will answer your questions. We've got a data scientist here who's also sort of a biblical scholar and everything like that. And then I'm just an asshole on the internet. So, gauge your want for an answer based on that. But anyways, we send in a super chat. We'll answer your questions. We'd love to hear any questions about any of the topics we've discussed: UFOs, aliens, Jesus not existing, any of that kind of stuff. Please send in your super chats. But anyways, we do have our first theist on the line. Andrew is calling in. And Andrew, what's up?
What's up, gentlemen? How you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Awesome. Happy Monday. My point is, it's arrogant to say that God doesn't exist. Like we weren't there during the beginning of the universe. We haven't been to the end of the universe. We haven't died. So how do you even know like what happens after death? So it's just a little arrogant, like to say, oh, there's no aliens. Like, I don't know if you guys have said, we know for sure there are no aliens. So, I don't know, just coming out as saying atheism is true, I think is a very arrogant position.
Okay. What are your thoughts there, Aaron?
Well, you mentioned a few places that we haven't been. So the beginning of time, what are we like when we're dead? The thing is, though, we have plenty of things that we can check while we're here. So, usually when someone says that they're a believer in God, they say that God is present in the here and now, not just 14 billion years ago at the creation of the universe and just stopped existing then. So I can look around and say, hey, do I see these sorts of things that I expect if there is a God actively participating in the universe as we speak? And there are things that you might expect, especially when you have the attributes of the God is all powerful, all knowing, all good. The things that fails to explain usually when we talk about like the problem of evil, the problem of unnecessary suffering, of which the world is unfortunately full of, and the only thing that seems to fix it is us trying to do what little bit we can with our extremely limited abilities. And the fact of the matter is, if I'm doing more to relieve suffering than the Almighty, that's at least some evidence against there being an almighty, all-good being.
So my personal take on this is that I don't say that God definitely doesn't exist, unless we're talking about specific definitions. So like if you want to say Yahweh exists, or any of the definitions of God that we have, I definitely say that those don't exist. Like, I feel like I can shoulder the burden of proof to show that those gods don't exist. But as far as the general idea of God existing, I remain agnostic on that. So I don't say that God, in all cases, just definitely doesn't exist or can't exist or anything like that. And as far as aliens go, I feel like the possibility or the plausibility of life arising on another planet is pretty good. So I think that what we consider aliens do exist out there somewhere. Now, whether or not they exist anywhere near us, I probably not, because it's a gigantic universe. So I don't think that any exists near us that they could get to us like anytime soon, or have been near us. But as far as God goes, this general idea of God, I look for reasons to believe. So like, Andrew, you said, well, you weren't there at the beginning of the universe. And the way that I come at that particular proposition is, okay, yeah, I wasn't. What does the evidence show us? Well, does the evidence indicate that there's some kind of creator God or intelligent being that causes the universe to come into existence? When you start looking at the science of it, we've got perfectly natural explanations for how this universe could have inflated and how things progress from that point forward. And so I don't see any room for a supernatural God to exist. That like there's no need for a supernatural God or a God or deity intelligence or anything like that. Like we just simply don't need it. And one thing that I've started saying on my channel a lot is nature's going to nature. And what I mean by that is that natural laws, and like the fabric of reality just sort of operates. And that's regardless of whether or not there's an intelligent being there. We don't have any evidence that suggests that there is an intelligent being, so there's no reason to believe that there's some kind of intelligence that causes all this to happen. And if you think that there is an intelligence that causes all this to happen, I think that you would have to answer like fundamental questions like, where is God in the water cycle? Like where is God needed for that particular thing to operate? And I think that the bridge right here that needs to be connected is between God and nature. Like you need to solidly show that God is required for nature to operate. And I think that that's an incredibly hard task.
Yeah. I understand that the universe functions through natural law, and those laws are not broken. And so if we have laws, somebody had to make those laws. I don't know if it's an intelligent being as described in the Bible, because I agree with
well,
the theology.
can I stop you right there? Well, can I stop you right there? Because you're already begging the question. You're already like, you're starting from the position of somebody or something had to create it, I guess, is maybe what you're saying. And I feel like starting from that position instead of, well, how did it come into existence or how does it, operate and all this other stuff? Like, I feel like that's a better question than starting off from immediately identifying that there's some kind of like intelligence or being or something out there that had to create something. That's a presupposition that I don't think that you can actually substantiate.
Okay. Natural laws, they just came into existence through natural means. It could have been natural means. Maybe God is just a naturalist being that started the whole universe and instituted natural law. I would say
If
natural
God
law
is a
is
natural
evidence of a
being,
natural
then God is
lawgiver.
not supernatural. I wouldn't call that God anymore. I would call that an alien, basically.
Oh, if it's powerful enough to create the whole universe, I would qualify it as God. Whether it's a being or a essence of power, that I don't see how you can. I don't know how you
Is
can.
it
prove that.
inside or outside of space-time?
Well, if I may,
I don't know.
the question was, of course, where do these natural laws come from? Does nature make nature? So let me give you some examples of actually how we understand where the laws, quote unquote, come from. Are you familiar with the second law of thermodynamics, Andrew?
I've heard it. Yeah.
So for the sake of the audience as well, this is basically, in simple terms, why things run down. And the results of it, where this actually comes from, is basically a combination of two things: the existence of atoms and counting. You get the second law of thermodynamics, basically that some states have more ways of existing than other ways, and so they're more probable. So, for example, it's possible that all the air molecules in the room I'm in that are just randomly bouncing around could all bounce in such a way that they all go into the corner of my room and the rest of my room is vacuum and I start like choking. Now, this pretty much never happens. And why is that? Is that actually it's obscenely improbable that all the molecules would bounce and go in that one particular direction. That is just a regularity that happens not because of some sort of underlying thing forcing that, but just that there's only one way all the molecules to be crammed up in one corner, but there are countless ways for those molecules to be randomly assorted in my room. So how do we get the second law of thermodynamics? Just by counting and saying this number is bigger than this number, so you're going to see more of this than that. This is literally how we get one of the most fundamental laws in thermodynamics and explaining basically all the motion of useful energy. So that's an example of something where we don't need a god to explain it. All we have to do is count.
Yeah. You've offered a naturalistic explanation. And I'm saying behind that explanation, a naturalistic being could have started that naturalistic process.
You say
yeah,
could
but
have,
don't you
but
feel
why
like
is it necessary?
He might
Yeah.
exist outside of space and time, but initiate that naturalist process.
I don't know what any of that means. Like that. I mean, I feel like maybe I'm not understanding, but that sounds incoherent to me. Would you mind telling us, like, are you arguing for a specific God here, or do you believe in a specific God?
I do believe in a specific God. I'm not very sure anymore, but I would just say it's probably more probable than not that there has to be something. And so yeah, the Christian God.
Oh, okay. So
I
the
don't have
Christian
scientific
God.
evidence for that. I don't have scientific evidence for that, but I am saying that there seems to be enough evidence for something.
What evidence is this other than your personal incredulity about like the second law of thermodynamics or the water cycle or how things operate in nature? Like other than all that, what is the actual evidence that you have to suggest that?
Okay. I tried giving one. So let me just try giving one more. It's humans throughout uh, for hundreds of thousands of years or tens of thousands of years have always believed in gods or divinity or have had a mythology. Um, this spans across cultures, and so it seems to be it's built into us. It's been programmed into us to believe in a god or gods or something spiritual. So why do humans have spirituality if it's constantly being disproven and yet we still believe in it? So I believe that that has to be a footprint of the divine into us.
So your evidence is either a bandwagon fallacy or an argument ad populum.
Or you can call it, I guess, if you're calling it that.
Yeah, well, I mean, because
can I give an example of?
Yeah,
let me just hop in here. So it's true that the beliefs in supernatural entities is extremely common, but one thing you'll notice is also just how immensely diverse those things are, and it seems to be extremely cultural. That if you were born in India, you are far more likely to have a religion that is the majority religion there than Christian or Jewish, for example. You're not very likely to be born in the Amazon and grow up to be a Zoroastrian, for example. The fact that it has this sort of cultural bent to it, and it seems to travel along those sorts of lines, makes it look more like it's fashion than it's reality. I mean, after all, there is clothing around the world, but we don't say that there is a clothing giver. We just say, hey, this is something that people use and produce, and the different weaves and the different colorations of that is ultimately transmitted by cultural forces, not by supernatural forces telling people, hey, put something on, you don't look great without that.
Yeah, that's okay. basically look at the Titanic. The event happened, but different witnesses have different interpretations of it. They claim different events happened at different times, so there's contradictions. But it doesn't say the Titanic didn't happen, and that's how I would approach those different religious interpretations. That they all are all sensing something.
Well,
They can't really
okay.
put words to it,
I can
but
understand.
there's
I can
something
understand that, but Andrew, do you know what the big difference between your Titanic analogy here and religion is?
there. Sure.
We have
I think I know what you're
found
gonna say.
the wreck of the Titanic, and we can see how it sunk. We can see that it like broke in two, and it and then it sank. Like we can see how it sunk and everything like that. Like we can analyze it, we can quantify it, and we can explain why it sunk and all of that kind of stuff. Can we do any of that for any of the religions? Also, the fact that there have been so many religions in the past that everybody has believed in, and all of them seem to be different, and all of them have, up until present day, have definitely been disproven, right? And currently, our current set of gods that people believe in, those are all different from one another. They're all exclusionary. So it kind of seems like appealing to, everybody just believes in all this kind of stuff. It makes it seem like, well, everybody can't be right, but everybody can definitely be wrong. And so it kind of seems just like everybody's pretty fucking wrong about it, because nothing in religion or these beliefs that have been permeating society throughout, human civilization, none of it has panned out and has actually comported with reality. We've always been able to explain it with natural processes, natural means, natural explanations. So it doesn't seem like it's all of that compelling to now say, oh, well, yeah, all of those other ones were wrong, but now we got the right we got the right description of God just now. Like he's revealed himself just now. Like there are even Christians out there that say that about all the other denominations that came prior to their particular denomination. So it just kind of seems like it works against you.
I don't think it works against me, and let me explain why. You can approach that with foods or politics. We all have different politics, like communists, fascism, democracy, or whatever, all these different political ideologies, and you can say, oh, they all disagree with each other, therefore they're all wrong. But government still exists because government.
No,
Just because people disagree
that is
doesn't mean
such a
government doesn't exist.
horrible analogy. Because look, here's why it's a horrible analogy. Well, true, there are different governments. All of them think that they have the best way or the most efficient way in order to run their country. But you know what we could do with those governments that we can't do with God is quantify the results. We can't quantify the results of God or anything that God has done, but we can quantify the result. Like a good example of this is trickle-down economics that was, introduced in the late 80s or something like that. But trickle-down economics, we know doesn't work like it's portrayed to work, because we can quantify the results of it, and we know that it doesn't work. So that makes it a bad political idea, or a bad economic idea, rather. And so we can quantify it. We can't quantify anything about God.
We quantify religion all the time. We have studies on the brain and what ritual does to the brain and what it does to cultures and humans. We do. And one question for you, or for both of you, is communism true or false? That
I don't even know
kind
what
of
that
absurd.
means.
Right, and that's what
Is communism true or false? Like, that makes no sense to me as a question.
I also have to ask, when you say communism, do you mean the version expounded by Marx originally, or do you think the Leninist branch, or the Trotskyite version, or the Maoist version, or what's going on more recently in North Korea? When you say communism, you do realize that's an extremely broad intellectual tradition. There isn't just one form of it. That's just like to say there's one form of democracy. And you say, well, the democracy, of course, here in America is very different than in England, with parliamentary systems, with first past the post voting versus ranked choice voting. Is like, yeah, there's a lot of different things there. So to say, is democracy true, is a very strange thing. It's not a proposition that has a true or false statement. It's more a question of, does it achieve goals that we can go and see actually comports to what we want to have happen? I mean, we could, for example, compare and say the US has this sort of policy. Does it actually increase GDP or not? And if that's, of course, a goal that we have, we can go and see, does it actually comport to that goal or not? And do at least something resembling science. When it comes to economics and sociology, it's much noisier than in physics. It's really hard to do controlled experiments with people. When I try putting people in random control groups and like hold them down to do experiments on them, they tend to complain, and I keep getting told that that's unethical. Problems like that. But in general, this is harder to do, but still something that we can actually go and evaluate and say, hey, this is better than that. When it comes to theistic propositions, who's doing the experiments to say, as you can tell, definitely the Catholics are more right than the Protestants when it comes to communion.
All right, Andrew, we do have a lot of calls lined up. We do appreciate you calling in. If you want to give us kind of your final thoughts here, we do need to move on.
Okay. No, I think I made my points. Have a good night, guys. Thanks for the conversation. I enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you so much for calling in, Andrew. I hope you call in again. This was a great conversation.
Totally agree.
Take care. Take care, guys. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Good night.
All right. That was a great first call. Now, I do want to let everybody know that if you like the line here, SkepTalk, or the other shows that we have here on the line, you can support us by going to patreon.com/call the line, and you can support us through there. We also have a number of shows that are coming up this week. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Central. Sorry, I had to get the right time zone there. 6 p.m. Central, we've got Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock and Andrew Seidel. And then on Wednesday, of course, there's Matt with The Hang Up. And then we've got Arden and Dr. Ben on Takis on Thursday at 5 p.m. Matt's show is at 7 p.m. if you don't already know what time Matt comes on. I think I forgot to mention the time there. So, between 5 and 6 generally is when we have shows here. Do tune in for those shows. We've always got great callers that are calling in. So
quick
be
correction,
sure to support the line
Matt
on Patreon.
is also at 6. Matt is also at 6. I just got that confirmed from Jimmy.
Oh, okay. Matt's at 6. Okay. It's different in the little sheet that I'm looking at here, but Matt's at 6. Great. That makes it a lot easier to remember. So we do, like I said, we do have a number of calls coming in. Eric is next that wants the Gilgamesh tablet number 11. What's up there, Eric? How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. I had a question about something that's been bothering me for years. I've been Googling and trying to confirm, and was just wondering if what I was told was in any sense accurate. So I thought you might know. My Western literature professor had us read the Iliad, the Odyssey, all these other things, including Gilgamesh Tablet 11, which has the story of Utnapishtim or Utanapishtim, who builds a boat because there's a flood coming, and he puts 2 of every animal on the boat, and the gods flood the world, and he's the only survivor, him and his family in the boat with the animals. And then when the floodwaters come down, he gets off the boat, and he's immortal. And one of the details that's in Gilgamesh, that's in that story, is that he makes a sacrifice of one of the donkeys or whatever gives birth, and he sacrifices for a newborn animal, and the fire from that sacrifice is food for the gods, and they've been suffering and miserable this whole time that the flood was happening because they were starving to death. And it explains in Babylonian mythology why the sacrifice to the gods is important, is because that's their food. And my Western lit professor said, and then that's why in the Bible there's no explanation for sacrifice. Like, why does God need a sacrifice? It's never explained in the Bible, and the reason it's left out is because that would be a weakness of the gods. You could literally starve God to death. It would be like his kryptonite is just don't make any sacrifices, and he has no food and starves and dies. And I thought that was interesting, but I have never been able to find out, like, is that an accurate depiction of ancient Near East mythology? Is that probable? Is that plausible? Like, I was just hoping that somebody would know if I was being fed bullcrap.
So is your question like that it would be perceived as a weakness for God to be hungry for something, or be suffering during this time?
Right. If God needs a sacrifice because that's his food, then you've suddenly clued man in to one of the weaknesses of God. And if he has no food, he's going to starve. So you have to leave that out if you want to create the thought of an all-powerful God.
Well, I mean, I obviously I don't think that the early like Jews consider their God like an all-powerful God. I can't recall right now if there's like a lot of places in the Old Testament where God claims to be all-powerful. There's a number of places where God is actually pretty weak. Like there are parts like when he goes against the iron chariots where God can't do anything against them because they're iron chariots. So, I mean, I think that that's probably as much weakness as God being hungry. I think that so what happened with the, working the Gilgamesh story into the Old Testament stuff, these Jews, they syncretized these ideas, so they took the very basic ideas from it and then they merged it with their own ideas in order to produce their own theology. And so I'm not sure if it would have been perceived to be weak or anything like that. I think that they were probably just crafting and creating their own version of God that it is a certain way. It's different than the other gods, and that's one way that it was
John?
Different. Yeah.
I need to quickly interrupt because Jimmy's letting us know that we're having some audio issues. Eric, I think we're picking up some of your speakerphone. So if you could mute yourself while while you're not talking, if you could mute yourself because we're picking up some feedback.
Yeah, or you could take it off speakerphone.
And while I interrupt here as well, super. And since I've already butted in for one thing, let me just continue butting in because I can't stop. This idea that the gods basically need humans to make sacrifices for them because that's filling their hungers. I can also give you a Greek example of that. So in one of the plays of Aristophanes called The Birds, literally the birds in that story decide to kind of like gang up and try to get some more concessions from the gods by literally blocking the smoke from the sacrifices to reach the heavens. And in that play, and Aristophanes is actually a comedian writer, so it's supposed to be comic on purpose, the gods are getting like super weak because they're not getting all those nice sweet smells from all those sacrificial meats they're getting. So the idea that even almighty Zeus, who sometimes is even called all-powerful, basically is like lying around complaining about being hungry, shows that conception definitely existed in antiquity. And according to the Old Testament as well, God definitely liked the smell of that sweet, sweet cooked meat. Whether it's in Cain and Abel, the sacrifice of meat was the thing that God preferred. And I think when Noah sacrificed, God said he smelled the sacrifice and that was like, oh, that's so good. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have killed everyone. So that is still echoed a little bit in there, even though it's not saying, geez, I was getting hungry, implying weakness. It was just more like, man, that's some good stuff. I should keep this going. All right, no more floods.
I got to agree. I love the smell of barbecue. Like whenever I'm making ribs, like it just smells so good. And all of a sudden, like all of my problems go away until I eat. Did that answer your question there, Eric?
Yeah, I think that covers it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, unless you got another question for us, thank you so much for calling in.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem. All right. Well, you have a good night there, Eric.
You too. Bye.
Bye. I totally didn't ask him what God he believed in, because he says he's a theist. We could have dove into that. So sorry about that. But we do have Omar that's up next. I do want to remind everybody that I don't think that Jesus existed in history. Well, most likely didn't exist in history. If that makes you angry, please call in. I would really love to get one of those kinds of discussions going on tonight. But next up, we've got Omar calling in. What's up there, Omar? How you doing?
Good. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Good here.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I was just, I guess just to jump into it, you had, I think earlier in the show, you kind of made a statement that, everything regarding the universe can be explained via natural mechanisms. And so there's kind of no need for God. But I guess I would say I disagree with that and maybe want to go into why.
Okay.
Okay, so
Why?
if we were to kind of, if we kind of come to the point of let's say the creation of the cosmos, or, just the cosmos coming into existence, I don't think it could be explained via natural means, because I believe that we must break either a space or time boundary in order to explain existence as we see it around us. And being spaceless or timeless. Mm-hmm. Well, so what that means is... Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
We have a bad lag here. I'm sorry about that. We have a couple seconds lag between us.
That's okay. Go ahead. I don't know what it means to break space and time prior to space and time existing, but I think you were about to explain that.
Sure, in a way. So what I mean by that is, for example, if we look at the cosmos around us, we could either assume that at some point in time it came into existence, or that it has always been in existence. And I think we could rule out that it has always been in existence, because that would essentially be calling for infinite regress, which, as far as I understand, that cannot exist in actual physics, in actual reality. It can only exist.
So let me
if I
hold
may
on.
hop
Let me
in
stop
as
you
the,
right there.
I'll just hop in as the physicist.
Well,
there's nothing in physics that says you can have that infinite regresses are impossible. That's a philosophical conclusion that is not necessarily held by all philosophers. In fact, there seems to be nothing incoherent about infinite regresses, and we deal with these sorts of infinities in mathematics all the time.
I see. So, I mean, if science is kind of described as what can be observed or measured or quantified, then can't we say for a fact that then infinity will never be a part of that type of science? We know that for a fact, because that will never be actually observed.
Well, so let me ask this. Do you have a specific God that you're arguing for?
Well, I'm a Muslim, but I would say what I'm arguing for is strictly theism. I think in order to argue my specific God, I would invoke a lot of beliefs, and I guess I'm not really trying to have a conversation about that.
That's fine. But I'm wondering, in what you're arguing for, is God eternal?
Well, okay, so I'm sorry. Let me kind of go back a bit. I guess one thing is I would say is if we kind of look at a general description of God kind of across the board, I think that certain things that all religions or forms of spirituality point to as God as being supernatural, kind of like above the natural world, and described as timeless and spaceless as being what makes him supernatural. So we say God is all seeing, which makes no sense, but if something, I guess if it's timeless and spaceless, it could make sense. Mm-hmm.
Well, for something to be eternal, does, and maybe Aaron can correct me on this, for something to be eternal, doesn't that mean that there is like an infinite regress?
Well, I would not apply that to God because, by definition, God is supernatural. So I would not necessarily feel that God needs to be bound by any sort of natural laws. That's kind of, I guess, the way I see it is that's kind of precisely the point of God. That's exactly what we're trying to describe.
What is it? Okay, what is it? Maybe you can explain to me. What does it mean to exist outside of time and space? Like, what like in your idea?
I can't give a coherent answer to that because, that's kind of like for a human mind, that's an irrational concept. So I can't necessarily describe it. I guess the best that I can say is that I know something exists outside of time and space. And I know that.
How do you know that?
It is because as far as I understand, it is necessary in order to explain existence within time and space. It's not possible to remain within time and space and explain existence. I feel like one of those boundaries must be broken.
From the physics point of view, there's no necessity in physics that the universe can't be infinite. In fact, in some ways, one of the first quote-unquote physicists, Aristotle, argued that the universe had to be eternal, both in the past and the future. And while Aristotle isn't exactly a modern scientist, there are still plenty of cosmology models that also have a universe that is in some form past infinite as well as being future infinite. So there's nothing in physics that makes that a requirement. So to say it's not possible for that to exist in nature, you would be telling a lot of physicists that their models don't actually exist, yet they're in dozens of published papers.
Well, at least the way I understand time, in a linear fashion, if we make the claim that an infinite time interval preceded today, wouldn't that mean then we should never reach today? Like we should never, if an infinite number of events preceded today, should not have this event then never happened because we still have to wait for those infinite number of events to take place already?
Well, no. I mean that would mean that the current time is always infinitely in the future at the same time that we're experiencing it. Like I don't understand like what you're trying to describe here, because regardless of whether or not there's an infinite past, we're currently experiencing our present. So I don't know why you would say that, the present is always infinitely in the future. Like we wouldn't have experienced it yet, or we wouldn't have gotten to this point yet. I mean, regardless of the eternalness of the past, but still, I feel like you haven't really answered. Like, if you believe that God is eternal, whether that's existing outside of our universe, outside of space time or not, doesn't that also mean that he exists eternally, like in the past? Like, and I don't even know how to measure time outside of space time, but whatever here, we're just throwing shit at the wall, I guess. But like, doesn't that mean, like, can't you use that exact same argument for your God? Like, shouldn't, like, if God exists eternally in the past, should we not even be in the present now because God's eternally in the past or some shit? Like,
well, I guess it's, we kind of describe God as existing outside of space and time. So for me, I guess I kind of just label it as irrational. Like, okay, this is just like an irrational aspect of God that we as humans cannot comprehend.
I don't
just
know if
kinda
you mean
label
the
it.
term in that way, because you'd be
Yeah.
suggesting your belief in God is by definition irrational, and I don't think that's what you want to say.
Well, I think the concept of God at its core is essentially understanding that there does exist something in this quote unquote dimension which we find irrational as humans, just because it's kind of outside of our ability of perception.
Again, I think then in that case, we just want to be careful with terms, because when I say something is irrational, that means your conclusion doesn't really follow from your premises or from the evidence you provide. And I think you want to be saying that your belief in God is rational, because if you're saying your belief is based on something irrational, you're basically saying we have every reason not to believe you, that you're the irrational, crazy person who we might have to wonder, do we need to put you in a padded room? And I don't think that's what you want to say about your beliefs.
Well, I guess I could say my belief is rational in the sense that I can deduce that nature cannot create itself. At least,
How
nature
have
as
you
we
deduced that? Maybe we can get back to the original thing here. You wanted to prove that nature cannot produce itself, or that this universe couldn't have inflated by itself. So what is your evidence that suggests that?
So I guess part of it is I'm kind of attaching. Let me try to. I wish I wrote some of this down. When I say nature cannot create itself, I mean we have to step outside of space and time, and I'm kind of defining nature or natural as being within space and time. And I guess the reason I'm doing that is because, in science is what us humans can observe and measure, and anything outside of space and time will never fall into the realm of science, because we will never be able to observe or measure infinity or nothing, because these are just concepts, these, as far as I understand. I know you said in physics they make mathematical models based on infinity. I did see a video. There's another physicist named Sabine Hossenfelder, and she kind of made a video talking about why she essentially, I guess, agrees with what I said, that we should not consider infinity in these models for the fact that we will never be able to observe infinity. And so it kind of does not exist in the world of science.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, Sabine Hofstetter. Yeah. Because I also follow the YouTube channel. I don't remember that particular video, but what we can say is, if such and such is infinite in scope, what sorts of observations could fall from it? So, for example, if the universe is of infinite spatial extent, this actually has consequences for the things we're going to measure, because ultimately that's a question of what is the geometry of the universe itself. And that geometry, when I say geometry, the shape of space and time is explained by general relativity. That's actually something that cosmologists have been studying and trying to more carefully measure for decades. And so far, our measurements are consistent with a universe that has a shape that we would call flat, which would mean that basically it goes off in all directions forever. So in a sense, our universe is infinite, or that infinite universe is consistent with current observations. And that is scientific. That is something we say, here's what our model would predict if this is true. So far, our observations are consistent with it. So we can say that it is at least scientifically justified to take this sort of position. And there might also be theoretical reasons to also take this, that this is best explained from our theoretical understandings from X, Y, and Z.
Also, Omar, I'm just kind of wondering if it would be possible for you to steelman a natural explanation for the universe. I mean, I would ask for the most likely explanation, as the most popular one right now. But could you steelman one natural explanation? Uh-oh. Did we lose Omar?
Or is he just muted?
He's not muted on our software, at least. Maybe he got carjacked.
There was some beeping earlier, so I don't know if he muted himself to block the car alarm.
I don't know. Omar, unmute. Okay. Omar, I'm gonna. I don't know if I should drop the call or just return it to the queue and then maybe check on him later. Okay, I don't know. Omar, if you can hear us, I'm going to return you to the queue and we'll check on you after this next call. But I don't know. We've already been on for 15 minutes. Actually, you know what, Omar, if you want to call back in, the lines are pretty much open, so you can just call back in. Appreciate you there, Omar. Because I really wanted him to see if he could. I really wanted to see if he could steel man at least one explanation for natural explanation for the beginning of the universe. Because as far as I understand it, the best explanation so far has been a quantum scalar field fluctuating from a false vacuum state into a true vacuum state, and that releases an immense amount of energy, which inflated the universe. And there's further explanations after that, which on a quantum scale, if I'm not mistaken, that doesn't exactly exist within time and space, or at least it's not constrained by the same properties as time and space is. I don't know. Do you know anything about that there, Aaron?
I don't know how quote unquote popular the model is of the universe tunneling in from such a vacuum state. But I will also note that a lot of interpretations of quantum mechanics would suggest that actually space and time is actually an emergent property from quantum mechanical interactions. So in a sense, time may not be fundamental, but something that emerges in the same sort of way. Water is not fundamental. It has components. It's real in the sense that, yes, there's definitely water, but it's not the most fundamental thing. And time may also be that sort of thing. That strangely enough, time and space, the grid system that we put everything else in, might not actually be the ultimate grid to put everything in.
Okay. Yeah, I remember watching, I can't remember what little, I don't know if it was like a Discovery thing or something, but they were like, there's a lot of different ones, but this is the most popular one. So I guess I really don't know either, but yeah, awesome. Okay. So next up we've got Violet, from Canada there. Violet, how you doing? I do want to start off by specifying that neither of us here are like therapists or psychologists or anything like that. Just so you know.
Violet, can you hear us?
Hello?
Did we lose
I
another
don't
caller?
know. I don't know. Jimmy, are you seeing anything from Violet? Violet, are you there? Okay. So I think we're going to return her to the CMAR has called back in. Let's try Omar one more time. What's up, Omar?
Right.
You back with us? did
I know
our
the delay isn't
system
this bad.
No, generally it's not.
Ready to connect.
Uh-oh.
Click connect to show now. You are connected as the host. Welcome, host.
Okay.
You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the call-in studio web interface.
Did
Audio
Omar just take
recording is
control of the show?
on. Dual channel.
So I think Jimmy restarted things. Omar, are you there?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
yes.
we got you now.
Oh, cool. All right, perfect. Yeah, I think we got cut off. I wanted to, I just reiterate the point you had made to me. It seemed like essentially you were saying that as of today, they use, oh, I'm sorry, we might have actually moved on from that. I kind of forgot where we were exactly.
Well, I was just wondering if you could steelman like your understand, like, or steelman any kind of natural explanation for the inflation of the universe.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll give you my take on that. I feel like both atheists or theists, I think regardless of what we are, I think it's kind of like shit just came into existence. Like just out the clear blue sky, shit just popped into existence. And I don't know if theism or atheism is necessarily a question of science. I almost feel like the difference between us is, as theists, we kind of ascribe like a purpose or a consciousness to this event, which, just gave rise to the cosmos around us as we see it. Whereas maybe atheists see it maybe just as more of a mechanical type of thing. So, I don't know. I guess that's my explanation is like shit just came to be. And, I happen to be a theist. I feel like there is something that we may not understand right now, but we will kind of understand it later. But, that's just what I think. I'm a Muslim and I was born into that religion. So, I've stuck with it and that's kind of my belief system.
Well, do you understand how your whole idea there is really lacking in the details, like as far as a natural explanation goes? Because like there's a lot of different ideas about how this universe could have come into existence, and all of them have explanations behind them. So just like this sort of random, I guess, popping into existence without any further explanation as to why that happened is not what the scientific, not scientific theories, but scientific hypotheses are.
Yeah, I guess, one thing that I read about as an explanation of the universe is they were talking about, I want to say it was like these kind of blocks of space used to exist almost in a timeless state, which happened to change forms, and it so happened to change to a particular form which gave rise to time, which is really interesting, but it's a little tough for me to maybe grasp exactly what that means. But it's something I read about and haven't really dove into. Maybe I should or would like to dive into something like that and just get a better understanding of what it is they're trying to say.
Okay, so we started your conversation off by saying that you have evidence that the universe couldn't have inflated just naturally. And the only thing that we seem to have heard from you is just this presumption that it can't, not like that you actually have evidence or any kind of explanation or argument that actually shows that it can't. You just presume that it can't.
I see. I guess because maybe we disagree about having an infinite timeline, precede us. And so my thing would somewhat kind of rely on that. That's why I feel so strongly that one of these bounds must be broken, which is essentially the basis for, how I kind of see things.
I don't understand how an infinite past works for you.
No, an infinite past kind of nullifies what I'm saying here, because I'm saying that's not a possibility. And given that that's not a possibility, we must therefore.
But you're proposing, but you understand that you're proposing an infinite past when you say that your God is eternally existing.
No, well, time does not necessarily apply to God. Like God exists outside of space.
Did God have a starting point? Was there a point where God started to exist?
No, that's not.
Then God is eternal.
Yeah, we could say that.
Okay, which has
Yeah,
the exact
he's always
same problems that you're saying that an eternal past has.
No, because an eternal past of a natural universe would need to abide by natural laws and fall within like natural laws.
Okay, so
There's no natural
your
law that
solution
says you can't have an infinite regression of things. So if you're going to say
Right.
breaking the laws of nature, I'm going to point out there's nothing in the laws of nature that says this can't be done. The only way that I have seen anyone try to make that argument has been more on philosophical or metaphysical grounds, that it's somehow logically or metaphysically impossible, which is not the same thing as the laws of nature don't allow it as if it's some sort of scientific fact. Because I got a whole bunch of physics textbooks around my living space here. None of them have that as a law of physics.
Yeah, I got you. But I guess when I understand time in a linear fashion, so let's say we call this phone call event A, and I tell you right now, after an infinite number of time, event A will occur. If I ask you when event A will occur, you will tell me it will never occur. So if event A is this phone call, you're an infinite.
Well, let's apply that same logic to the Almighty. Let's go with this. So at some time in the past, God decided to create the universe. And scientifically, this is 13.7, 13.8 billion years ago. All right, so let's just assume that's the case. Did God have a thought before creating the universe?
I mean, I can't. I'm a human, so I want to point out one thing in my religion, in Islam. God is kind of explained as something that if God were to even present himself in front of our face right now, we would not really comprehend. We wouldn't even see him. So you're asking me questions about that.
Wait, did you hold on? You literally said that if God visually presented himself to us, we would not be able to visually see him.
Well, not if he visually presented himself to us. I'm just saying that if what the point being made is that the human mind just can't comprehend because we cannot comprehend spacelessness or timelessness. We can just understand it as a concept, but that's not. I don't know. The way I
feel like you're kind of being incoherent at this point because I feel like I pointed out the flaw in your whole idea that the universe can't be naturally occurring, even if we consider an infinite past to be there. So I don't know. We do have other calls to get to, but I really appreciate you calling back in there, Omar, so that we can finish out our conversation.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate you guys. I enjoy the conversation, and at least the way I see it is, it seems we disagree about the infinite past, which is what my argument rests on. And but that's cool. We could disagree. That's fine. But yeah, appreciate it, guys. You guys have a good one.
All right. See you later there, Omar.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Okay. Well, that was an interesting thing. I'm glad that he was able to call back, though.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed that we couldn't have a little bit more conversation about God's thought process, because even if God is completely timeless, I could still ask the question about God having a thought before creating, and if then in that case, could God have a thought before that thought and can create the exact same infinite regress as everything else? So even without time, all the same numerical problems would exist. And if that's not a problem for the Almighty, it can't be a logical problem for stuff.
Yeah, well, Aaron, you're not factoring in magic. It's got to be, that's the one thing. You draw a cloud in the sky and you say magic, and that's how you explain shit, right?
Even magic needs to at least be logically coherent, because even if I go and read Harry Potter, I expect words to mean the same thing from one page to the next.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, next we've got a theist, Wes, be calling in. What's up there, Wes? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Audio good.
All right. Cool. Good. Well, I'm kind of new to listening to some of these shows and things, so I apologize if I'm not, if I'm not real put together on some thoughts and things. But it seems to me, just by listening in on some of the things, some of the past shows and some of your own work, that that a lot of your work seems to be against kind of a fundamentalist, like a modern fundamentalist idea of God that seems to have strayed quite a bit from Scripture itself. I'm a Christian, and
No. So are you you're talking to me specifically, right?
either one of you, I guess. I mean, I've seen a little bit of Dr. Adair's work on the Star of Bethlehem.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, either one's fine.
I can't speak for Dr. Adair here, but I know for me, I have a wide range of different issues, ranging from, fundamentalism is what I cover, but I also cover evangelicals. So, I mean, I cover across the entire spectrum of Christianity and religiosity. So I feel like you're starting off by portraying me in a light that I just don't fit in.
Okay,
And just
I
to
don't
speak
mean
for
to do
myself,
that.
because and just to speak for myself, that I deal with the claims of everyone from Ken Ham to Paul Tillich. So as far as I can tell, I'm trying to engage with theologians from the most crass to the most sophisticated.
Okay, yeah. So I think that a lot of the like apologists that you see online, or that I've seen just recently here, seem to be taking a very unbiblical stance towards God. They seem to so just to be a little clearer about that, they seem to be saying that they know for a fact that God exists, for example, right? I just saw like a tweet from Frank Turek the other day that said the resurrection is a historical fact. And that's just not
right.
That's not even biblically true. I mean, that the whole Bible is built around faith. And faith has nothing to do with certainty. It's like it's something that faith and hope are very clearly tied together. So it's something that we should, as Christians, hope that is true, and that we have like a kernel of faith that it's true. But this whole idea of I can prove that God is real and I can prove the existence of God seems to be like a non-starter to begin with.
Okay. Do you believe that the Bible is like historically accurate, or I guess I'm getting kind of a weird vibe off of you as far as the Bible goes. So would you say that the Bible is historically accurate?
The Bible was written by men in concursus with God. So it's got all kinds of things in there that God allowed, and as he's working with men to create it wasn't created outside of men. There wasn't anything that was created in there that couldn't have been created without completely separate from God.
Okay. Well, how about instead of telling, is there any, tell us what you believe about the Bible, or you believe about the Christian God? What are some things that you believe about your God and your faith?
I believe that God cannot be proven. I believe that it's a possibility that God exists, and the historical reliability of the resurrection can't be proven. It's a possibility that exists, and it's something that we read about. We look at the entire history of the faith, and as it's been passed down to us, and we make a decision as to whether we believe it or not. And we should make a decision based on hoping that it's real and having faith that it's real. But the whole apologetic of certainty and uncertainty,
Wes,
doesn't make sense biblically. Yeah,
Wes, I can hope that unicorns shit rainbows and it tastes like Neapolitan ice cream. But I mean, I don't understand how that like what difference does that make? Like me hoping for that to be true, that doesn't make it true, and it does. I mean, I guess I just don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. Like, what are we supposed to do with this hope thing? Does hope clue us into what happened in reality? If the Bible supposedly records historical events and historical things that happened, you're saying that you hope that the resurrection happened. Don't you? Wouldn't you want to know, like, what is true about reality instead of just hoping for what's true about reality?
Yeah, I think that there's a difference between plausible, possible, and foolish, just completely implausible hope. You can hope in things that are just absolutely can't be true, and you can hope in things that could possibly be true.
Okay, so is the resurrection of Jesus plausible?
100% plausible.
Okay.
How do you come to that conclusion?
Well, I mean, because I believe that God is 100% plausible, and that if God is 100% plausible, then resurrection is 100% plausible.
So this might lead to some circularity, but I also want to be a bit careful. When you say plausible, is that just a way of saying it's logically possible? When you say 100% plausible, are you saying 100% it's an actual fact? Because that would contradict what you said earlier. I just want to have clarity with your statement.
Right. Yeah, no, plausible, like really plausible, like it's a possibility. It's a real possibility that it happened.
In that case, with possibility, or let's talk probability, is it more or less than 50%?
See, it is less than 50%. It's probably less than 10%. It probably is, but according to the Bible, we don't need that kind of certainty. That's what I'm saying. I feel like the apologists and the fundamentalists.
Well, there's a difference here, though, because if you say the probability of Jesus was resurrected at 10%, that means that's a 90% chance he wasn't. So to believe the thing that you're 90% likely to be wrong about would make your belief inherently irrational. And I think that's different than saying agree. Possible, where it's 50-50, where say, well, we can't know one way or the other, and then taking one view or the other is both equally acceptable. But saying I'm going to believe the thing that the evidence is against is often irrational.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. So I think that if you had a terminal disease and the doctor said there's this experimental treatment that's got a 5% chance of working, but it's really irrational to believe that it's going to work, but there's a 5% chance. I mean, I would take that 5% chance.
And I would too, because the other thing
I don't think that's irrational to take that.
Well,
right,
that's always
exactly.
But that's the thing about comparisons. When we're comparing 5% chance of working versus 0%, I always would take 5. But conversely, why would I take 5 instead of 95? In this case, if you're taking the 10% chance of the resurrection, you're basically saying you have also agreed that 90% your proposition is false. And this is very different from doing comparative advantage. This is saying this proposition is either true or false. And even though you say it's probably false, I'm going to say it's true anyways. That is irrational in terms of taking propositions.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. But what I'm saying is you have a 0% chance of surviving this terminal disease called death without the resurrection.
Not true, because we could always go with other religions. For example, in very different things, like say in Hinduism or Buddhism, there is this eternal cycle of reincarnation. So all I have to do is say, no, just the Christians are wrong, and I'll just go with this other religion. Or we go the super Elon Musk route that Neuralink is going to work and my brain is going to be uploaded to Skynet or what have you. Now, I'm being a little facetious there, but that is at least something more consistent with our scientific knowledge that we could survive the death of meat by putting our consciousness in some form of digital format. And at the very least, there is more evidence that that is going to happen in the near future than all of the dead saints will rise when the coming of the Lord from heaven, which, by the way, is apparently just up there above the flat earth if we go by the, way the biblical text expresses things. I mean, after all, Jesus hasn't even left this galaxy, even if he was going at light speed, according to, the things laid out, that he was supposed to ascend up into the sky, and even if he was going max speed, he is still within the disk of the Milky Way, let alone has he anywhere near another galaxy.
Yeah.
So, Wes, are you proposing Pascal's wager here?
Yeah, that's I think it's probably, I think Pascal is kind of like a, it's missing something. It's probably related to that, but it's missing something. Pascal seems to be like, well, we have no idea, so I'm going to bet on this. And I'm saying would you call an experimental treatment Pascal's wager?
I mean,
See,
I don't think
exactly
Pascal's wager applies
Pascal's
to
wager.
that. No, it's not comparable to Pascal's wager. And for instance, one of the weaknesses of Pascal's wager is, other religions existing, just like Aaron pointed out here. You think that Yahweh is plausible to exist, right? Do you feel the same way about Allah?
I feel like yes, it's plausible. I feel like Yahweh is more plausible. Kind of like a doctor saying there are 10 different treatments available, and I'm going to take the most plausible of the implausible.
Hold on. What makes Islam less plausible than Christianity?
I find the story of Muhammad less plausible than the story of the resurrection.
I will point out, though, you've already said that the resurrection story is probably false from your own numbers.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
and you
the story of Muhammad is more probably false.
It's worth noticing that, well, here's the thing, though. In Islam, they don't believe Jesus was resurrected from the dead. It's the common belief that Jesus was actually taken down from the cross and someone was crucified in his stead. So they have taken a position that is more probable than the resurrection one, again, based on your own numbers. So what you have actually said would actually make Islam more likely true, because Islam denies one of the central claims of the Christian religion.
Right. You'd have to take the entirety of Islam and the entirety of Christianity, not just the central claim of whether Jesus was taken off the cross and replaced or not.
Well, there's a lot that Islam agrees with Christianity on as well, including the virgin birth, all the stuff about the Old Testament patriarch narratives and Moses, and also all those things don't exactly line up with archaeology as well. It's not like you're going to hop over to Islam and things are 1% better or 1% worse. It's just like, hey, in all of these cases, there's a lot of baggage when it comes to factuality that is not favorable. And I don't think you're getting much purchase sticking with Christianity in this particular case. Again, based on your own estimates of probability. And I'll mention my estimates of these probabilities would be dramatically lower because, first off, dead people tend to stay dead, and we have approximately 100 billion examples of that. So that's a bit of your prior information that you would have to work against. The vast majority of humans who have died have stayed dead. To say that there is this exception, you will need a lot of evidence even to get that to 10% likelihood. And I don't know if you're extracting that from the Gospels or some other derivation, but you'll have to tell us.
I'm extracting it from my best hope to survive death. That's what I'm extracting it from. I want the best possible hope to survive death. and Neuralink is not available yet. So today,
it doesn't matter.
I'd like to survive it if I die tomorrow.
But listen, what can, like, you're saying you hope you can survive death, meaning that you hope that there is an afterlife. And I mean, I can understand why you would want to hope that, but I feel like it's more important to understand what we can know about reality. And what we know about reality is that when we die, that's it, as far as we can tell. So how do you know what's after this life? I mean, you hope for these various things, but you don't have anything to prove like why somebody should believe in these things.
Well, I mean, all of the reasons why people would say that all the things that you hear people talking about that are like proofs that God exists, they're not proofs that God exists, but they're plausible reasons why God exists. And, you know, I know that y'all are mythicists, and so it's completely possible that the whole Jesus story was a myth, but all of the reasons why historians would say that he possibly did exist, those are possibilities. And I would like to be able to place some faith in things that are possible in order to try to survive this thing called death that we're facing pretty soon. You know, the Bible says
I will note that historians don't just say Jesus possibly existed. You're going to find that most Jesus scholars will say he probably or very probably existed. They are not wishy-washy, just saying, it's possible. They are quite adamant, and all the more so considering there's approximately 200 plus years of attempts to reconstruct the historical Jesus in studies. And that is not 200 years of biblical scholars saying, we're not even sure there's a guy here. No, this is a whole lot of effort of trying to parse out the historical figure behind the stories. And I will also note that when it comes to what you hope for, your hope seems to be ultimately grounded in what you grew up in. To me, there are plenty of other hopes of afterlives we could have that are distinct from the Christian tradition. There could just be straight up universalism, and that God, this is some sort of deistic being who wants all of us to come to his realm. Or it could be that we have these cycles of infinite return, and the only way to escape it is realizing that this world is samsara and that we need to reach nirvana, as in the Buddhist tradition, for example. And those things aren't necessarily worse, in my mind, than the Christian imagination of what heaven is. And if all we're going by is what we imagine, well, all those possibilities just kind of cancel out, and all we're stuck with is saying, hey, we don't know, but the best we can tell, every person who's ever died has stayed dead, and all I can do is do the most I can with this life. The only thing I can confirm actually exists.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think that if Buddhism is true, then being a good follower of Christ, according to the Dalai Lama, will get you into the next life. So I feel like I'm kind of covering my bases with that. And I think that
with Allah.
Right, that's true. That's absolutely true. I'm definitely taking a side against Allah. Muhammad had a 9-year-old bride that really irks me, and when I start looking at this versus that. I'm going to take Jesus.
I'm sorry. You're acting. I'm sorry, but you're acting like Muhammad was any better than the ancient Israelites that thought up your Yahweh.
Right.
Like, right. I mean, you have several places in the Bible. Hold on, I'm talking. You have several places in the Old Testament of the Bible that has that same kind of shit going on. And you even have them violently destroying people and taking young virgin girls so that they can marry them off. So you can't sit there like you're on some high fucking horse of Christianity when that high fucking horse of Christianity is built on sexual slavery and the imprisonment of women and the buying and bartering of women, even young children. So don't sit there and act like you're on some kind of high fucking horse with that kind of shit. You have the exact same. Hold on. I'm still talking. You have the exact same kind of evidence for your God, your Jesus, that Muslims do for, the things that Muhammad supposedly experienced. So, I mean, don't sit there like you're any different. Anyways, appreciate you calling in, Wes. Yeah. This was thoroughly fucking confusing, and I hope that you'll call in for somebody else.
Okay, thanks, man. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
I hate it when people act like they are their belief is so much different and better than this belief over here. It's like, oh, this belief was shitty. Your belief was shitty at one point too.
Yeah, and I was going to be a bit worried if we were going to go down the lineage of Jesus, which includes several prostitutes and rape victims. That's right in the genealogy of Matthew, including Bathsheba. So if we want to go down that route, we are not exactly looking at a pristine family history.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so next up we've got Nick from New York who's a theist. And we do have one last call to get to right after you there, Nick. So what do you got for us?
How you doing? I am calling in because of a previous call with a gentleman named Omar, where you were talking about infinities and how they would apply both to space and time, and then also to God. And I believe one of you, sorry I'm forgetting your names, but I think one of you mentioned that you still had some questions about how the concept of infinity and God having a thought before how to reconcile that. And am I remembering that correctly?
Could you repeat what? Because you were kind of cutting in and out there for a second.
Oh, I was. I'm sorry. Yeah, basically, I'm calling in because of a previous caller who you were talking to regarding the nature of infinity as its relationship to time, as its relationship to God, and there seemed to be a question regarding the nature of how could God have thoughts. How could he be infinite and have a thought to, say, create or something like that? And I want to just call in and offer a perspective or ask a question. The idea of God having thoughts, that would only apply to a God who is changing in some respect. Would you agree? Or, in other words, there's a concept of God that I think most monotheists hold, that God is essentially changeless, that he already knows everything there is to know. And that's part of why he's qualitatively...
are you...
Oh, go ahead.
Is that what you believe about God?
Me, yeah, I'm a Christian. So I would say yes. God, my concept of God is not necessarily one who is having thoughts prior to creation, but one who already knows everything there is to know. But I called in specifically regarding the nature of infinity itself. But go ahead.
Well, yeah, but you're claiming that apparently thoughts only apply to things that change. Since God doesn't change, God has no thoughts. So God isn't, like, in your view, God is not thinking now.
It's not that God has no thoughts; it's that God has all knowledge. And so the activity, like a thought, essentially would be a transient activity.
I don't think that it had I know. Well, yeah, and I mean, like, I know things about calculus. Like, I've already know those things, and I can recall them. That's a thought. That's not something that's in transit. Like, that's me accessing knowledge I already have. So why? I mean, how is that different from God just accessing his knowledge? And, like, I mean, that's a thought.
Well, I think it has to do with the nature of causal chains. Accessing is part of a causal chain. And so I think the concept of God that Christians or Muslims or Jewish people would put forward is that God is actually separate from causal chains, that he is the thing from which causality emerges. He's not actually part of causality.
All right, let's try this route.
Which would be true of something infinite. Which would be true of something infinite.
I want to try this process out then, if we can. So,
sure.
Since you said you're a Christian, then you believe in concepts of virtue and vice, sin and sinlessness, things like that, right?
Correct.
So if you sin, how does God react to that?
As a Christian?
Whatever way you want to explain. If you were to sin, what would God's reaction to that be?
Well, I don't want to speak for God. I would just say that God's God's relationship to sin specifically is what is out. My understanding is what is outlined in the Bible. That sin is basically, how do I articulate this?
Transgressing his opinions. It's transgressing God's opinions or God's commandments.
I guess one way to explain it maybe would be like, the earth rotates, and so part of it's facing the sun, part of it's facing away from the sun. Sin is, in a sense, turning away from God, so to speak. And, so...
Fine.
It's
We'll
not
go with that.
It's not that the sign... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, whichever way we want to describe sin in that way. But my understanding is that if you sin, this makes God upset, unhappy, does not like that outcome, prefers that you not sin. Right?
Well, the sun doesn't change when the earth rotates. The earth changes what it's experiencing.
The sun's always changing. The earth's always changing.
What I mean is,
and in this case, with your well, here's the thing: I'm trying to see if there's supposed to be any sort of reaction from God, whether you do good or evil, if you sin or don't sin. Does God have no actual care which you do, or does he care?
Yes, I would say God does care. You're basically, if you are in a finite thing moving across a spectrum of infinite qualities or attributes, as Christians would define it, then as you change, your experience of the attributes of God will change. And so that's why I use the earth and the sun. The earth rotates, which is why one side of it feels heat, then the next side of it feels
So this is getting
coolness.
beside what I'm trying to point at. I'm saying, does God actually have a reaction to what you do?
Does God have a reaction? I think the question as posed is framed within sort of a temporal fashion. I get what you're saying, by the way, like cause and effect.
The Bible literally has God getting pissed off and punishing the Israelite people. You just got to say yes.
No, I agree. I'm simply framing it the way I understand it, which is that as Israel is coinciding with what God decrees, they're experiencing the part of his attributes that is in favor of what he decrees. As they turn away from that, they're experiencing, but those attributes don't change. It's their experience is changing. Because
so if we follow this logic, I'm happy to try to follow you down this
ahead.
road, but here's the problem.
Sure.
You basically have now made God not God, because you've now taken away anything that we would call personhood, is just being itself, which I would just say, well, that sounds just consistent with the laws of nature, and that's all that Israel was encountering when they weren't following these commandments. They were just happening to bump into the way the universe operates. And because there's no consciousness, there's no decisioning, there's no personality behind it, to say that that is God is just to add a label to things, just to make things sound more spiritual. This is actually a point made by David Hume in his Dialogues of Religion, saying, hey, if you are basically going to divorce thought from God, then you're basically just creating a definition of God for just whatever you need at the time, irrespective of your traditions, and it's mostly just a matter of taste. And if that's how we're going to decide our metaphysics, I think we're making some serious philosophical errors.
Also, I want to point out how the way that you've portrayed God here, the way that you portrayed God here actually makes him a whole lot easier to debunk, like as a truthful idea. Because then all you have to do is prove that, not boiling a goat in its mother's milk is not going to have negative ramifications for me or the society that I live in. You can do that, multiple times a day. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. So therefore, your God doesn't exist. Like, you literally just have to pick out one thing that God supposedly has commanded. And supposedly, if you don't do this thing, you're going to, quote unquote, experience the negative attributes of God, whatever in the fuck all of this means. Then you literally only have to disprove one of those commandments to show that your God is bullshit. So I really don't think that this is a good, line of argumentation to go down.
No, but I mean, and I hear what you're saying. And by the way, I can grant everything that you're saying for the sake of this conversation, because the reason I called in was about regarding the nature of infinity. I'm happy to go down. I mean, you're the host. This is your house. I'll go down whatever road you guys want to go down. But my initial question was, or my initial question that I was positing you guys, was regarding the nature of infinity. But I could also say that, just to touch on the point that was just said, my reaction to David Hume would be like, it seems to me like you're elevating one concept of God as if it is the sole logical, neutral concept that should be accepted. There are other conceptions of God outside of that, and you would have to demonstrate why the one you just put forward should hold the center as the neutral one.
That's actually Hume's point. That was actually Hume's point, is
right,
that
okay.
You guys are just, I mean, his whole point was, hey, if you were saying that God is, well, his particular example was, if one is going to say God is completely unlike anything humans think or understand or experience, it's like, so then God doesn't have a mind because we've experienced minds. And if you divorce God from that, how are you any different from the atheist who says there's no person that runs the universe? If you can't distinguish theism and atheism, are we just basically playing with words? In this case, you just don't want to call yourself an atheist because it has negative connotations. That was Hume's point in his dialogues. And I'm saying the same thing here. And the sort of God that you were describing, which sounds kind of like Aristotle's being, qua being, that is just basically existence itself, we can say that exists, and I would still be an atheist because I would just say, that isn't the conception of God that really fits what most humans talk about of some sort of supernatural person. If it doesn't have thoughts, feelings, desires, wills, then to call that anything other than a god, just to call that a god is just to basically try to carry on all the old myths and things like that and find some way to fit them into this new conception, because Aristotle's God has no scriptures, has no moral conduct, is just there.
Yeah, and so maybe one question would be regarding the nature of personhood. And would you guys say that it's your position that personhood, a necessary attribute of personhood would be transience? And what I mean by the question is, because I would agree that in this conversation, like Aristotle's prime mover could be an example of what we're talking about. You then distinguish that from personhood. But the question I would pose is, if you're talking about a person with exhaustive knowledge about all things, that doesn't seem like something that's necessarily counterintuitive to personhood. In other words, I could imagine a conception of God that is personal and has exhaustive knowledge about all things.
Well, here's the thing. You've described a God that doesn't think.
Qualitatively infinite.
Well, here's the thing. You said that basically God is unchanging, so God doesn't think. If something doesn't think, I would say that's not a person then.
But
that's my whole point. If you were defining God in this sort of way, then God thinks in the same way a rock does. And, well, no. I don't think rocks are gods. And if you have this entity that has no actual thought process, why you would actually ascribe mind and personality to that just seems incoherent. And it's just literal projection.
But wouldn't you say that conflates thought process with knowledge? Because
no, I'm not talking about knowledge at all. I'm completely separate from knowledge here. I'm just saying, if your God does not actually think, it doesn't actually change its mind, it doesn't interact in any sort of way, it is just there as some sort of constant, then it literally is no different than just non-existence. It's just background noise. It's not actually the thing that people want to worship to, pray, and hope it will do things for them or not do things to them. There is no possibility of then having a relationship or anything else like that, because that is not an entity that actually has the qualities that we consider personhood.
Okay, so you would say that a thought process is a necessary attribute to personhood.
Well, let's put it this way. If I type a message into ChatGTP and it never responds, would I say it's just an amazingly deep thing in thought, or would I just say, hey, it's like there's nothing there at all? What you're describing, if there is not even a way to communicate, to commune with the entity, then why we call that God? Why call that a
No,
mind
I didn't.
if there's literally nothing to commune with?
I don't think that there's no way for God to communicate. If by thought process you meant that there's a mechanism through which God can disseminate the information he has, that's different from needing to, within himself, think about
I haven't talked about
something.
knowledge at all, so you've been importing that the
Okay.
whole time. I can think in my
No, I'm
head
just
and not
trying to
impart knowledge.
clarify.
I have thoughts right now. I'm thinking about things without telling you about it, things that you probably don't want me to tell
Sure.
you about, and I know my wife doesn't want me to tell you about. So I'm going to keep that to myself, and
Okay.
I have those sorts of thoughts totally internally.
Yeah, of course. So then I'm not entirely sure where the nature of our disagreement is. I see three things. One is knowledge, like that's the data, do you have it? The other is thought process.
This is, again, completely
internally.
divorced from knowledge. If you say God does not think, does not act, does not do anything, that is not the God of the Bible. That is not even a person. That is just being itself, and it is indistinguishable from any other non-theistic tradition. I can still be an atheist and believe the same thing you do.
I gotta be honest, I'm totally
That's what I'm
lost. I
trying
have
to
no
clarify.
fucking clue as to what we're even talking about at this point. I mean, because listen, here's what I see. I read the Bible. The Bible is the requirements document for your God. Your God expresses thoughts all throughout the Bible. So it seems nonsensical and a non-starter to me to sit there and be like, God don't have no thoughts. It doesn't make sense with the requirements that are laid out in your Bible. So it seems like a non-starter for you to be like, well, God doesn't have thoughts, so he couldn't have thoughts before time existed. And which I feel like is what we're getting back to, is whether or not God could think before time and space existed. And I just, for one, you haven't answered the question whether or not he could, other than maybe no. I mean, I've been listening very intently, and I think the answer is no, but I don't know.
Sorry, do you want to repeat the questions just so I know specifically what you're asking?
Did God have a thought prior to the universe existing?
Here is my understanding of what the Bible communicates. Specifically, if we're going to talk about the Bible, God qualitatively had. Well, I'm answering your question. I mean, it may be a yes.
Yeah,
or no
but it's a yes or no question. It's not a complicated question. This is like a session of Congress. Does God have thoughts before universe exists? Yes or no?
In terms of internal transient thoughts, the answer would be no. In terms of relating to temporal beings, the answer would be yes. And both of those things are completely compatible with both of those things are completely compatible with a God who has infinite knowledge.
Either God had a thought or he didn't. It's not both at the same goddamn time.
I have to say, Nick, you are sounding incoherent, and saying it's coherent just by fiat.
Because at root, what we're communicating about is the idea of transience, and infinite things are by nature static. An infinite set of numbers is not a transient thing. It is a static thing. It is an infinite set of numbers, for example, right?
Wait, what's your basis for saying that infinite things are static? Like, that just seems to be a presumption.
Because the definition of infinity in calculus would be the limitation that can never be reached, right? There's no limit to it. It is occupying all vectors of fill in the blank already. So, for example, one of the reasons we know, like, if you want me to use an example to demonstrate the point, one of the reasons that we know that there's not an infinite number of stars, there's an incomprehensible number of stars, but there's not an infinite number of them, is because if there were, stars would be occupying every vector of the space-time continuum. The very fact that there are places where stars are not demonstrates that there's not an infinite number of them. That's what we mean by infinite.
You're referring to Olber's paradox, and the problem is that Olber's paradox only works also if the universe is of infinite age, so that way the stars have enough time for their light to get to us. But we have not only a finitely sized amount of time, but also there are stars that are beyond our horizon of which we could possibly see. So
Right.
using Olber's paradox in that way to come to that conclusion is faulty.
But-
It is actually possible that our universe is of infinite extent, which also means it could have an infinite number of
Right.
stars.
No, but the point is, the reason why there are not stars between us and Jupiter is because there's not an infinite number of stars. If there were a
No,
truly
that's
Why-
not
actual-
at all.
no,
You can have it-
Wait,
that doesn't make
this is the difference between
no. Hold on.
potential and
That doesn't.
actual.
No. Wait a second. Wait a second, Nick. That doesn't make sense with what Aaron just said. Because if there's an infinite amount of space for stars to exist within, why do all stars have to be compacted into a finite space?
Because the
I guess I don't.
definition
Maybe
of
I'm not.
infinity.
That's not how the
Sure, no,
definition
the
works. In fact, I'm
definition-
going to give you a way of having an infinite number of stars, but not having them infinitely close. Let's just have the density of stars of 1 star per cubic light year. That way there's no stars between us and Jupiter. If that's the density of stars, and then we just take that density, which is number of stars over volume, multiply that by an infinite volume, you get an infinite number of stars, even though the density is finite. So what you said does not follow.
Can you add any stars? Can you add any stars between us and, say, Jupiter or the Andromeda Galaxy? Can you add the number of stars between us and those 2 points?
I don't understand your question.
The reason you could conceptually add the number of stars between us and, say, the Andromeda Galaxy is because there's not currently an infinite number of stars. That's the reason that is the reason why there are places where stars are not, because there's not an absolutely infinite number.
First off, what you said doesn't actually follow for multiple reasons. First off, I can actually still potentially fit stars in, even with an infinite amount sort of there. Again, somehow we're not taking physics into account, but there are also different size infinities. So we get into a nice little Hilbert's Hotel sort of thing. So I could fit a countable infinite set of things along the points between ourselves and the Andromeda Galaxy, because the number of points between us and the Andromeda Galaxy is actually a left one, or an uncountable infinite set. So I can put an infinity of countable set things there, no problem. So this is what happens when we deal with infinity. I have to ask you which one.
Operator shift. That's a modal operator shift.
No, I'm going to make a modal operator shift to move to another call, Nick.
No.
I'm going to make an operator shift to move to another call. Because this is getting very pedantic, and we've been on for a while, and I feel like this is breaching on incoherent. But I appreciate you calling in there, Nick.
Thanks for your time, guys. And just really quick, can you mention the name of that book that you wrote at the beginning of the show? Because I'd love to read it.
Well, I'm going to have to say books because I have to hawk all my wares.
Oh, books.
So, so the most recent one is
this
one I did with my co-author.
Jesus.
This is the one about aliens and religion, and if aliens exist, what does that do to theism? My previous one was The Star of Bethlehem, A Skeptical View, which is also very Jesus-y, but attempts to use astronomy to basically find the birth star for JC and why it doesn't work.
Okay, I look forward to reading that. Hey, thanks so much for your time. Sorry if I made any confusion, guys. That was fun. Have a great night. Thanks for your time.
Good night.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, so we're finally heading into our final call. So sorry for our final caller. They've been hanging on for a while, so we're going to get to our final caller. Just letting everybody know to send in a super chat of $5 or more. That's the way that you can get us to read your comments and everything like that, and also to appease Jimmy in the chat there. If you will, send in a super chat. We'd love to hear from you. I mean, personally, I would love to hear your best nonsensical take on anything. And I feel like offering a prize for anybody that can make the most nonsensical statement, like Nick did in this previous one, like thought, no thought, yes and no kind of bullshit. Anyways, send in a $5 super chat. You might win something. So next up, we've got Violet. There we go.
Hello.
Hi there, Violet. How you doing?
Good. Can you hear me this time?
Yes,
loud and clear.
We got you.
Okay, good. Worried last time. Okay, so I'll try and keep it as quick as I can because I know we're at the end of the show. First point, autism research is primarily done by the medical industry, and particularly autism speaks. And you don't need to get into the whole politics of autism or about psychology to know that there is a long history, just like with gender, just like with sexuality, to try to make it so that trans people don't exist, to make it so gay people don't exist, and historically to make it so that autistic people don't exist. And so that's why as recently as I think up until 2016, the majority of research has been effectively with the goal, whether implicitly or explicitly, to cure autism, to remove it, right? As a result, there has been next to no research on people with autism showing traits of cognitive diversity that do not match up with anyone else outside of the spectrum, or at the very least with neurodiversities that certainly don't conform to what we understand about attention, what we understand about various other types of imagination that we've observed. Stuff like mind palaces was one of the best examples I have of that. That's one of the few that actually is studied because there's been a financial benefit to it, because of memory equals more effectiveness on the job. And like most things that are studied, it's usually with a practical and pragmatic purpose. And so what I'm wondering is is it unreasonable to argue that there are things that autistic people have claimed to be able to do that are treated as supernatural, like mind palaces for the longest time have been treated as something that is completely absurd and psychologically impossible by most of the medical community, that could actually have scientific merit. And that the reason why it's not being discredited is less because of any actual evidence to the contrary that it is untrue, but more the assumption that autism is inherently disordered and therefore inherently leading to mental disorders that negatively affect people, that there's no positive outcomes from neurodiversity.
I guess I'm a little lost on what the question is exactly. Like,
yeah, I was going to even say a couple of times I was going to jump in here. Violet, resident autist here. What the fuck are we doing right now? What is the relevance to tonight's topic? We don't have a neurologist or a psychologist on.
I did not know who was on until after I had already joined. So that was something on my part that I should have done more research on who the hosts were. I just read aliens, UFOs, cults, and I know that that's one area of discussion that, especially amongst the autism community, it's treated like a pseudoscientific supernatural phenomenon that people are able to create. They use like magical words like tulpomancy to describe multiple personality disorders and all these other like mystical language. But that while those terms are obviously mysticism, or not literal mysticism the way that you're describing it with atheism, but mysticism in that it's making it sound more magical than it actually is, that the phenomenons that people describe are like scientifically sound, but just understudied.
I guess we'll just take the point and then maybe call it a day, because as an autistic person and even a well-researched one, I'm not aware of people giving us magical traits. Perhaps if you're trying to describe like how in the past people mistook certain conditions, and autism among them, for things like demonic possessions and the like, sure, that's all there. It's kind of sounded like you just grouped multiple personalities into autism, which also isn't something I'm aware of, but whatever.
But I also throw in a bit of clarification, again, because this is well outside of my knowledge, but it sounds also somewhat similar to categories of people that, at least in the past, were called idiot savants, people that had what would seem to have disabilities, but somehow in that disability having some sort of quote-unquote superpower.
The Rain Man trope. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And obviously, I think that could be damaging, because you see someone with some sort of neurodivergence and think, oh, this now gives them some sort of special power, in the same way they'll say, like, oh, blind people have better senses of smell or things like that. It's like, probably unwise to assume X-Men like sorts of things happening in those scenarios. So I would agree with you that is
I'm not
dangerous.
saying X-Men. I am not by any means claiming that people can read minds or like the men who stare at goats, where like they can just magically blow people up with their mind, or all this other junk. That's obviously pseudoscience. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more registered phenomenon in terms of mind palaces, in terms of out-of-body experiences being able to be induced. Lucid dreaming is one that's actually been recently more documented, both with neurodiverse and non-neurodiverse people. So that's at least gotten some more research, and just a large amount of body of psychological discovery and differences that are connected sometimes with autism, sometimes with just diversity in other ways. I mentioned multiple personality disorder as an example of diversity outside of autism, not necessarily that they are the same thing, but I'm sorry for...
Yeah, it's all fine. I think we just take the note and move on, because unless you're here to argue that the scientific consensus is that out-of-body experiences are scientifically sound and people are actually leaving their body, which I don't think you're here to do, I don't see
what way we could... You mean. I mean, when you imagine something, are you leaving your body? When you imagine...
No, it's in your brain. It's all in your brain. So your brain's in your body. It's a part of your body.
That's my point. Is that
yeah, cool.
It's just because something's in your brain doesn't mean the phenomenon itself isn't there. Like when someone talks about a mind palace, it can be all in your brain, but that doesn't mean it's not true. But the problem is that people treat...
Right, Violet. What I've just been trying to figure out the whole time is like what the point of this is. Is it your impression that when we debunk out-of-body experiences, we're saying somebody who said they had an out-of-body experience actually experienced nothing, or are you?
Define nothing.
No, go away.
Define imagination.
Violet, that's enough. That's enough. Have a good night, Violet. Thank you for calling in. I don't know what the point of this was. If you sort something out and you want to bring something that's more of a conversation, especially to somebody with a relevant expertise, that'll be fine. But this conversation is definitely done.
I'll wait for someone with a relevant expertise then. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
Violet. Goodbye.
See ya. Bye. Yeah, I definitely was not equipped to have any kind of discussion about any of that. So
I'm
I will
honestly
say
confused because can't people who aren't on the autism spectrum also do lucid dreaming and mind palaces? I don't think that's a specifically autistic trait, as far as I know.
Which I think was something she was saying at the beginning. But then the whole thing about that, there's no specific element of autism that you don't... I'm eating mac and cheese, if you're wondering why it sounds like I'm eating mac and cheese. You hear it swirl around. I'm thinking of thinking of that old vine of the Mom, this is what good pussy sounds like. Anyway, do you guys remember that vine? Anyway, it was his mom was mixing mac and cheese, and he walks up and she just looks at him and goes, Andrew, or something, whatever his name was. Anyway, there was already enough pedantry in today's episode, and then as soon as I heard, when I asked whether or not she was trying to give a note that when we were talking about out-of-body experiences, that we're not necessarily saying people experience nothing and that we'll define nothing. You already know what type of conversation you're queuing up, because it's literally just like, no one is saying people don't experience something. It's a misattribution when they go, it's magic. And so it was just becoming far too pedantic for my liking. But if a relevant expert wants to take it up, nobody here disagrees that the research on all these things are lacking, that you shouldn't broadly generalize people, that we should try to have empathy even for people whose experiences we can't fully understand. Like, I don't know what it was. It was just a weird call.
Well, one thing that I did want to say was, I don't advise people to donate to, what was the Autism Speaks? Yeah, I personally, when we donate to a charity about autism, we go to Turning Point Autism. They provide a lot of great services for people in that community and everything. So, and they don't spend a lot on overhead compared to like how much money they get in. So, I generally will donate to them.
Anyone watching who wants a way to donate to autism can do so by super chatting
There you
$5
go.
or more.
So earlier I said that if you send in a super chat, you might win something, and one person has. But if you super chat in like some bit of nonsense that does better than Nick's nonsense that we had earlier, I've got a whole bunch of audiobook stuff that I can credits that I can use to give you a free audiobook or a free Kindle book. Just send in a super chat, and you might be able to win it. Right now, looks like Kathleen Moncrief's in the lead by just participating, so she's already won something.
Violet, this is what I mean by the call didn't make sense and you kept going other places, because you just said you never claimed it was magic, and no one here has ever claimed that you claimed it was magic. You got to start listening to the things that are being said and not the things you're listening for. Good Lord. I don't hate you, Violet. It just fucking super confused me. Maybe I'm sensitive to the particular issue. Anyway.
I'll also throw in one thing as well. I had to check if it still exists. When it comes to funding autism research or autistic groups, it reminded me of the unfortunate activism of Jenny McCarthy about the alleged link between vaccines and autism. And the website still exists, the Jenny McCarthy body count. It hasn't been updated in a long time, but basically the attribution of deaths due to people not getting vaccinated. And this is from well before COVID time. So it is woefully out of date considering recent history. But there is at least some decent science out there, and Autism Speaks isn't probably giving you the best source, nor are certain Hollywood celebrities.
Jenny McCarthy, I feel like her rise to fame as an quote unquote activist, we should have seen the Trump presidency coming is kind of what I'm getting at. Like that was a turning point in, fucking stupid people will do anything that it's somebody who's either charismatic or hot says. And I split those up because Trump is only one of those two things. Jenny McCarthy is
totally
arguably
hot,
both.
totally hot.
Yeah, fucking, oh my God. Like a hot rod and I'm wanting to ride.
Oh, that tie is so long. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. I still wouldn't be able to see his thing if he wasn't wearing any clothes with that tie that long. Where's that goddamn thing down to his knees? I was like 13 when someone took me aside in church and was like, that's not how you wear a tie, idiot. Whatever. Maybe his dad wore super long ties. I'm just buying time to try and get some more of these super chats in. Y'all, we got bills to pay.
I know. I'm trying to incentivize people, but apparently they don't like books.
Right now, I'll tell you the big bill, because we run the entire company out of my house, and so we have computers that run things. We run, and then we have one server, and there's a lot of electricity cost, which has gone inexorbitantly up. Is that the right use of that word? We'll pretend it is if it's not. But it's gotten so expensive to just exist in my house because of how fucking hot it is in Texas. Did you hear that like this was the hottest week on record ever in the whole world? Like the world is way hotter this week than ever before?
Yeah, I saw somebody on TikTok record a car whose tires were melting just on the street of somewhere. I think it was probably somewhere in like the like over there in Asia, maybe. But it got like fucking hot and started melting tires and shit.
As far as the forecast, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't remember if it was Santa Fe or elsewhere in the Southwest U.S. that hospitalizations were going through the roof, not just from even heat exhaustion, but from people burning themselves just touching buildings, just becoming so hot that it's actually causing like second-degree burns on them. So you can't even go outside and touch anything.
Yeah. I mean, hell, here in Alabama, like if it's a particularly sunny day, like I've had people that have had coins melt in their cars.
That's crazy.
Which I mean,
how do you melt a coin?
I mean, you
like
just
chocolate
leave it in
coins?
Alabama. No, like an
'Cause
actual, like a quarter.
Those will melt just slightly above room temperature, John. You got to start protecting your chocolate coins. What are you doing, man? By the way, I keep eating this mac and cheese. It's not good. It's from the store. It came in one of the tins that you heat up in the oven. So I thought it'd be better than your typical Kraft. And I got to tell you, I'm wishing I had mixed up some powder and some milk.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is we need to get some super chat so you can get the high quality Kraft mac and cheese.
The better mac and cheese, yeah. They just recently opened a
Donate.
Costco nearby. Please buy me some hot dogs.
Super chat $5 so Jimmy can film himself snorting mac and cheese dust.
I'm not doing that. And by the way, partially just because I am an ex-Coke addict and you're not supposed to do things that are like your old habits. Yeah. Yeah.
I had no idea about that, or I wouldn't have mentioned it. Sorry.
Yeah,
Jimmy.
I don't go dancing at night either because I know what that leads to. The Christians were right. Dancing leads to cocaine. Yeah, heat wave in KC right now. There's a heat wave everywhere. That's why I said, okay, I'm not kidding. And I did this on Aron's show yesterday. Please super chat $5 or more and just tell us what the weather is like and where roughly you are. You don't have to give a city, or I mean, you can if you want, if city doesn't matter to you, but just part of the world, part of the country. I really want to know. I'm not yet 100 years old, and yet with the way I am obsessed with the weather, you'd think I was. Where is this? That's not correct. Let's try that. Oh, I broke everything. There's like a bunch of stuff that I changed on the back end. Oh, Wes's car is going off again, or was it Omar's? Did y'all hear that?
I think I heard it from my end. I heard a beep from somewhere outside of my place.
Well, just so you know, you and Omar are apparently in the same place. Why is this still not working? Okay, wait. Did that fix it? Okay, now it's working. All right, here y'all go. Now this is going to get real trippy because of the way we did Dr. Adair's keying. But here's some soups.
All right. So first up, we've got Too Young to Feel This Old, who says, I bought Dr. Adair's Aliens and Religion book after the last time he was on. Excited to start reading it once I get through a couple of other books I already had lined up. Thanks for what you both do. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
Just make sure that you've read it before his next appearance, which could be any day now. Oh, you're waiting on me, huh? Fuck.
That's what I try to do. All right, so we got $5 from the Raven 200. If an intelligent alien life form did exist and came to Earth to speak with you, the host, what's your reaction? And does this alien have a nice booty? All right, so we are making a lot of assumptions about the anatomy of this alien if it actually has a derriere. It could be very slug-like, it could be echidna-like, it could be many unimaginable horrors that I'm pretty sure H.P. Lovecraft has described, even though he also said they're undescribable. But at the very least, I'm pretty sure if we put them on the line, they would be caller.
Okay, but could it be red?
I'm hoping if the aliens are smart enough to get here, they're smart enough to speak American.
No, but if just simple knows about the simple yes or no's real quick on some of the attributes of this alien. Could they be red?
When you say basic attributes,
I'm just trying to do it. I'm just trying to do a bit, and you're so stopping me from doing it. Just say yes. Could they be red?
Yes.
Could they be blue?
Plausibly.
Yes.
Could they be violet skies? You know, I don't have a lot of joy in my life. I don't have a wife like y'all have wives. I don't have love. I barely have friends, and I'm paying most of them. You could let me have fucking one thing, doctor. Jesus Christ.
Sorry, not sorry.
I believe you. And I reject your apology.
All right, next up. So we got Junie the Apostate, who says, how would one respond to Christians who are so convinced that the end times are nearing based on, quote, signs of recent times, i.e. the mark and vaccines and a one world currency, etc.? Thank you both.
You throw something
Aaron,
hard at them.
Well, what do you think there, Aaron?
Well, when they say, well, the Bible predicts wars and rumors of wars, and I would say, yeah, that happens on every day that ends in Y.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow, and earthquakes are going to happen? It's not like there's a history of those happening.
Well, yeah. And of course, if you want to talk about the mark of the beast and all that, you need to remember it says that is the mark of a man, not the number on a microchip that somehow they fit in a syringe.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like the mark has come in several different, like, incarnations. Like I feel like anything could be the mark. And then there's the whole one world currency thing, which I heard was, like, at one time they were using the euro as evidence of this and everything. And so, I mean, I feel like you could literally point to anything and be like, that's a sign of the end times, until you can actually explain what it means to be in the end times as far as, like, in reality, like, what that means. I don't see any point in it. Like, I would probably, to answer the question, I would probably look at them confused and just say, how is this different than any other period in time? Because anything that you could point to as being any kind of sign would be the same things that were happening like 100 years ago.
Yeah, I would actually say do one little bit of interesting historical research. Go get a copy of Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth. It was a bestseller for years and years and said there was all these great reasons to say that the end of the world will be in 1988. Well, fuck all happened with that, so we can be pretty darn sure that these methods of predicting the end times are, well, Jack and shit, and Jack left town.
I just found a really stupid article called Why Atheists Change Their Mind, 8 Common Factors, and one of them is reasonable atheists eventually become theists because they are reasonable, and furthermore, because they are honest. I'm going to have to might read that article on an episode, but the reason why I found that is because I was actually trying to find the name of a book. And okay, here's the thing. If this is the correct book, I read it in a day over 100 books ago, because I try to read at least a book a week. And I think this was a couple years ago. But I think this is the right one, but there's a chance that this is actually a terrible book. And it's the one that I, in the past, have mistaken for this book. But there is a book called How Minds Change by David McRaney. And I think this is the good one. But double check the summary before you read it. Make sure it's not the bad one. I'm pretty sure that's the good one. Because I think David McRaney's also a science podcaster who's pretty dope. If somebody can confirm that I'm right, I don't know. Anyway. And then I also like books like Stephen Hassan has a book called The Cult of Trump that has an entire chapter. I think it's chapter 11 that is dedicated to how to change a person's mind who's deeply indoctrinated.
All right. So we got RPG debunks for $5. In the event of a singularity, time stops from an outside perspective, which means that at that point, or in the point of the singularity, time can exist infinitely. Part 1. I assume then there's a part 2 to the message. Part 2, which means that if the universe started from a singularity, there would be no reason to assume it had a quote-unquote beginning. Instead, it's eternal. So in the case of singularities, that, space and time goes completely kablooey. Problem is, most physicists would say that the singularity is not a physically possible state. So all the stuff that might happen there might ultimately be physically irrelevant. Mathematically interesting, but more often than not, the singularity is what happens when you divide by 0, and when you divide by 0, that means you're wrong.
And I mean, my entire point, as far as like the discussions that we've had tonight on the show, was just that, you know, the theists act like, you know, they have a gotcha, like, oh, well, the universe can't exist eternally because of infinite regression or whatever, but my God's eternal. It's just like, well, that doesn't solve the problem. Like, that's my entire point, is that just throwing a God in there doesn't solve the problem that they're trying to solve. Just makes it more complicated for them. All right, $9.99 from Wesley Commons. Thanks for the great conversation, guys. Wes, thank you so much there, Wesley, for calling in. That was a fun conversation.
Yeah. Like watching a pendulum swing above your head.
All right, so we got $5 more from the Raven 200. You know what grinds my gears? People who won't answer questions honestly. Jimmy, go take a Super Ghost kamikaze attack from Super Saiyan Gotenks. Well, Jimmy, that one's on you. So looks like you got your work ahead of you.
Pretty sure that's a Dragon Ball Z reference. And anytime I did watch anime, which is why I sometimes get the Ravens references, I only watched good ones. So
yeah, well, personally, I know Super Saiyan, but the Gotenks, that's a word I'm not sure what's going on there.
I did allow for a couple of weather-related $2 super chats to come through.
Okay, so Paul the Potato said, local Monday weather, cool, breezy, lazy Monday, 25 degrees Celsius, which is, what? That seems pretty nice out. 25 Celsius. 77 degrees. That's not bad.
Perfect. Yeah, it's been above 40 C this whole week in where I'm in Texas, Paul.
So $2 from Mark Rothenbolder. Or Bueller. I apologize for the mispronunciation. Best cheese, pepper jack. That is a contender. I agree.
I also let some cheese-related comments through. By the way, I also think that that's a really good one, and this is how I know you're American. Like, it's only in America does anyone say, like, pepper jack, Colby jack, cheddar, mozzarella. Well, mozzarella has some universal love, but they also do it. You ever have, like, authentic Italian mozzarella, that soppy mess that you keep stored in water? It's fucking disgusting. And then it's like, it also doesn't cook the same way. You like have to cook it way more to get it to actually melt. And so if you don't do it, you just feel like you're like deep throating a big old ball of string cheese. It's fucking awful.
You know, you're reminding me that I need to make a trip a bit up north here. My wife and I did cheese fondue like 4 years ago at a restaurant, and I realize now we need to do that again.
Is it the cheese fondue place? Is it Melting Pot?
I don't know the name of the place, but I mean, it's like here, just like north of the Boston area.
Okay.
We used to have a Melting Pot here, but it went out of business.
Yeah, because they way overvalued what a little bit of food put into some cheese or some oil would be worth. It was always, every time I went to the Melting Pot, I was like, you know what would be so fun? And granted, it is fun. And then you get the bill and you're like, how is this over $200? There was only two of us. The fuck is this? And it wasn't over $200 good. It was, you know, I could say maybe $100 for if you get the whole experience, the multiple course meal. And even then, I'm a pretty stingy guy. I'm not trying to pay over $100 for two people. Not unless I'm really.
I wouldn't.
Like if I'm fifth date and still haven't, you know, sure. Maybe then, but not shy of that. Anyway, someone read this chat from Dylan.
Dylan, did I read the last one?
Yeah, I read the last one.
No. Okay. Dylan Fuller says, hearing about alien and demons together reminds me of American Horror Story Asylum. Classic gray aliens are some of my fave. Also, best cheese is mozzarella.
I probably agree with Dylan on best cheese, but that's got to be largely because I will put it on almost anything, and I especially love it on a pizza.
All I will also note that classic gray aliens that only started becoming quote unquote a classic, I believe, basically in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
Before that, there was much greater diversity in what those aliens were. The grays are a relatively recent cultural phenomenon.
I think the first hints of it and the shifting came a little bit earlier than that, but yeah, this is actually something I was reading about not too long ago.
Oh, it's actually one of the things I mentioned in my book as well, is that the idea of the grays and things like that with the bulbous bulbous head, wraparound eyes, that's actually based off the alleged experiences of Barney and Betty Hill, who said they were abducted in the 60s, but it looks like they were probably influenced before going under hypnosis by literally episodes of The Outer Limits that they had seen maybe a couple nights before.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Wouldn't it be fucking wild? I'm going to go look back in my history and just see. It'd be funny if I accidentally read one of your books and didn't realize that that's happened. Who did that happen with before? It might have been. Oh, it was Dr. Ehrman was on Matt's show, and he was describing something that was in his book, and I realized I had read the book and thought I didn't know who the guy was before he came on our show. That happened not too long ago. Yeah, but it was years past. Did we read this one?
Not yet.
No.
Canadians?
Yeah, so Kathleen Moncrief for $20. My best nonsense take: everything you eat has molecules that were once crapped out by many other living beings. Therefore, we are all connected through the magic of crap. Well, that is craptacular, and I crapaliciously agree.
I would say Kathleen is in the lead right now for winning the free Kindle and or Audible book. So, way to go, Kathleen! Thanks for participating.
How many people is it estimated that every ounce of fresh water has been through? It's a lot.
I don't know that, but I've usually heard the thing that said, like, in any glass of water, at least one of those molecules was spat out by Napoleon at some point.
Word. That doesn't seem like that could be true, right? That it specifically will be one of Napoleon's? Yeah, I get it.
But it's also true whether it's Napoleon or the Archduke. No, not that. Just, let me go back a little further in time. Who defeated Napoleon at Waterloo? I'm forgetting all this. Duke of Wellington.
I'm just saying we drink a lot of spring water, and a lot of that water never had seen human until it was extracted from inside the aquifers. I don't think that's the right use of that word either. Fiji water was never spat out by Napoleon. That's the best. That's what they should put on that should be their marketing.
But how do you know the water actually came from Fiji?
I don't. I just trust it. I go, this tastes like the last bottle I had. And I feel stupid because it cost way too much. Anyway, if I was bottling water, I would totally make it a central advertising part of my campaign that I would say that my water definitely was not ever spat out by Napoleon.
Oh, Fiji water did something, you could say nefarious. They were trying to claim that their water was actually greener or better for the environment than other waters. And the way they were shipping it, it could have been argued that it might have been better than other bottled waters, but it ain't better for the environment than freaking tap water.
Yeah. I promise you, if you came to visit me, you would not drink the tap water.
You remind me also, unfortunately, again, not only am I from Michigan, but like Flint, Michigan was kind of my extended backyard. So every time I think about what happened there, I want to find the governor of that time and just wail on that person thinking, you took away the city's democracy and poisoned their water. You fucking piece of shit. How are you not in jail?
Yeah. I'm not trying to say it's all that. It's real smelly here. Like if I wash my hands after I use when I wash my hands after I use the bathroom, you'll always assume when the door opens, I just took a shit, even if I peed. That is some smelly water. Anyway.
All right.
Next from Colin Roche, huh?
There was that all right that Aaron just did was a little loaded. I could hear a little like I did not get a PhD to sit here and talk about his shit water, but it's okay. It's fine.
I was more worried by the fact that if every single time you pee and it smells, I'm thinking like maybe those athletic greens aren't quite doing what you want them to do to your body.
Bro, you have no idea. It's not actually that. The medications I'm on, my fucking urine is a Laser Floyd show. Just crazy colors and smells. By the way, do you know the cereal Honey, like Smacks or Golden Crisp?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's my favorite cereal to eat because it's when you eat it, the next time you pee smells exactly like the cereal. It's so fun. It's so weird how
I will not be able to eat those now.
Try it. You should try it. Try
No.
it. It's the weirdest thing to have your pee smell exactly like the cereal.
So I didn't expect this for the show, but I guess you could really say you're in for a surprise.
Ah.
All right, so we got Colin Roche who says, by Nick's argument, there can't be infinite prime numbers because the numbers in between prime numbers are not prime. Two infinite but related sets.
I think that's a good example, Colin. I agree that, yeah, I'm fundamentally confused what Nick was trying to do with that argument.
I think Nick was confused too.
Multiple callers today called in to use the exact same arguments they'd already had destroyed. Two of them yesterday had destroyed, but I think they thought like, well, these two will be more polite, which will make me feel a little bit better about, I can pretend I was more right. Well, you're more polite than I am. Yesterday I told, I think one of the people who called today, but I could be wrong, but I told one of the callers yesterday that next time he should eat chocolate before he smells his own farts. That was how I ended a call. It's better smelling farts.
All right. So from KO, Heatwave in KC, $5 for that. Thank you, KO.
Then from Josh, this donation is meant for Jimmy to get better mac and cheese, then go fuck yourself with it. I don't know how, man, you can figure that part out.
Doesn't seem
I mean, I guess you could freeze it.
No. You fill out, you empty out a flashlight.
Oh, God.
You fill it with the mac and cheese, and then you put a plastic cover over the top that has enough give. Probably a pretty good situation. Probably a good scenario. I'm not doing it for $5, but there's an amount of money where I'd figure it out.
Well, that takes noodling to a new level.
That's see, he got a PhD in puns.
Yeah.
One skeptic and one flashlight. I can just see the video now.
So from L. Gleason, $10. Curious, what year did Aron get his doctorate at OSU? I graduated from there in 2013, so just almost exactly a decade ago. Specifically, I defended my thesis in December and graduated that month.
Cool. I got my master's in 2012, but that's not as impressive as a doctorate, I'm telling you.
I'll throw in one more anecdote for that as well, because boy, oh boy, that excite me. When I was a kid in elementary school, favorite book series I was reading was Goosebumps, and the commencement speaker for my PhD was R.L. Stein.
That's dope.
Oh, nice.
That's fucking dope.
And if you're wondering what his commencement speech was, he basically said, I figured you guys aren't going to remember the speech, so I'm going to tell you a ghost story.
The only way that could have been cooler is if it was R.L. Stein as played by Jack Black, because Jack Black played R.L. Stein in the movie. Yeah, that'd be dope.
I took the original and was very happy for it.
Tight. I'm more of a doctor than Dr. Kent Hovind, so I guess I'm a doctor.
I am too, for that
definitely
matter.
less wrong than Kent Hovind.
Brian Pooh KC going to be 105 in KC this weekend. We had no power from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. today.
Terrible. Yeah, they've been doing a little bit of rolling blackouts in my area. Well, we can't confirm that that's what it is, but it seems real convenient. And it goes out at roughly the same time. Y'all get heat eczema on your fingers at all? Little water blisters make them itch like crazy?
Not recently. I'm not holding hot pans.
No, like not like burn blisters, like eczema blisters.
Okay. Not I. On the other hand, Too Young to Feel This Old for 2069. I like books, GE. Here's some bat cheese crazy for you. Dr. Kent the Science Gent. Give me Audible credits now, thanks.
I mean, I feel like Kathleen's was a little bit better. This is totally opinionated on me, but hers had a little bit more in it. Kathleen says for the Jimmy needs ice cubes, hot dogs, and cheap craft dinner so that he can go fuck yourself fund.
I don't remember the ice cubes. What were the ice cubes for? Did we bring up ice cubes?
It's for the swelling.
Everybody needs ice.
Just for the hot, I guess. I might try ice on these itchy ass fingers. I think that only works on I think that only works on mosquito bites, though. Kills the itching the protein that causes you to itch.
So Dylan Fuller. Oh, this one's I think on me. All right, from Dylan Fuller, $5. Also, I've been enjoying sci-fi stories where humans meet aliens in the future and learn about or can see our guardian angels. Pretty neat. It's 81 in Central Florida. I'm curious which one where the aliens are the guardian angels. There's so many sci-fi stories. I don't doubt it. I just would be curious which one that might be. I will give it a counterexample to that in Arthur C. Clarke's first novel, Childhood's End. When the aliens reveal themselves to humanity, they actually look just like traditional devils. And they had tried coming into Earth's past. The encounter went poorly, and that's why then people associated devils with bad things. And an interesting way to explain world mythology with aliens in a slightly different way. And of course, it's Arthur C. Clarke, so you know it's classic sci-fi.
Dylan, dyshydrotic eczema does not behave the same way as the more normal eczema, and so it actually requires. I got real strong steroid cream. Just saying. Dylan had said said something about eczema cream in the deal in this chat just now.
Okay. Next, we've got Emery King who says, I love catching these live, but I'm in California and work till 5 or 6 every day. At least I catch the Super Chats live, particularly when Forrest is on. Lol.
I always love when Forrest isn't
long.
on. And I love when Forrest isn't on and people like to remind me that they don't like me and they do like him. Or just that he's their favorite. We know. God damn, you could pay more to tell us that you hate us. Jesus.
All right. So Brian
is my favorite
another
too.
$4.99. All right. As a former church librarian, had a book calling out end of the world signs in World War I. Oh, I do not doubt it. I don't know enough about the literature then, but if any war was going to look like the end of the world, World War I probably looked like it.
Every generation, though, is sure that theirs is the last generation. That's just the...
Yeah, but the descriptions of trench warfare...
Yeah.
I mean, obviously World War II had a larger body count. It had nuclear weapons at the end, but just the horror that was the meat grinder of the trenches in Western Europe, I don't know if hell is any worse than that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Paul the Potato says he doesn't understand infinity. There are infinite numbers between 1 and 2, but still none of those numbers are between 5 and 6.
That's kind of like when the guy was saying the thing about you'd never be able to get to whatever, and I mentioned in chat, I was like, well, there's an infinite number of numbers between 1 and 2, but you can still count to 2.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this getting into the fun of the difference that there are different size infinities. Yes, some infinities are bigger than others.
And you can add to infinities. That was the thing I thought was crazy when he was like, well, then if you already have infinity, how would you add another star between here and Jupiter? Like, I don't know, slowly? What the fuck do you want the answer to the question to be? You know,
that sort of mathematical problem is not even a homework question for a math student in undergrad. This is just about labeling. So adding one more to the set is just you've moved around the labels a little bit. So the thought process that helps some of this put away is Hilbert's Hotel, though Hillworks hotels usually try to broad out to show how crazy and how infinity can exist, but in reality, it's just like, well, no, if you're actually careful with infinity, you can have a completely consistent logical system and mathematically deal with infinity.
I just thought it was funny that the implication that you couldn't do that if you had an infinite number of stars, then you couldn't put the star between us and Jupiter. The implication of that is that your infinity is finite. Am I wrong? Like that you've got your infinity is affinity.
It always, right. Yeah. I mean, like whenever something like that comes up, I usually try to ask like, what is the maximum number that exists? And it's like, I mean, you can't point to like where numbers stop, you know?
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of the things that Nick was going with, it sounds like he might also be influenced by William Lane Craig, because he also tries to bring out these infinity concepts and say they're incoherent. So like, I think he gives the idea of a library and adding a book to a library with infinite books. How many books does it have now? It's still infinite, but we added a book. Yeah, it's a different infinity. Yep, so it's different. Problem solved.
Yeah.
I'm literally rubbing my skin off on the fabric of my chair. My fingers are so itchy. Just wanted y'all to know what's going on in my world.
Is it my turn or your turn?
I think it's your turn.
Okay. Chris Carrillo says, have you struggled with resentment against religion? How did you recover from it? Do you have any advice on how to move on? Also, it's 96 Fahrenheit in Dallas. Yeah, so I haven't struggled with resentment against religion. I mainly struggle with resentment against like people and their actions in my life. I guess I don't have a problem with resentment against religion, so I can't give you advice on either of those other two. But I've also been to therapy, and that works great.
Yeah, and for me, when I stopped being a believer, it wasn't really that big of a deal for me, because all my conceptions about God were very academic ultimately, or philosophical. It did not feel like I was losing a friend or something that important. And for the most part, when I have anything quote unquote resentment, like, it's more against people that use religion to structure power in such a way that they are hurting others or even hurting themselves in that process. Fact of the matter is, my issue with religion is the way it can be used to get to false conclusions and defend them tooth and nail, and make it harder for us to move past it, because it's now become, one of those, what do they call them? Sacred cows. There you go.
You say can be used. I say necessitates. This is why I'd say there's no such thing as a harmless faith belief. At minimum, it creates an environment of gullibility, because it creates a foundation that you can believe, that it's acceptable to believe on the basis of conviction as opposed to evidence, which is why people like use marketing algorithms to prey upon people who have even new age faith beliefs and financially abuse them, essentially.
Yeah, I would only complicate that in that religion isn't synonymous necessarily with faith, and that tight coupling is in some ways a modern phenomenon. So if religion is basically just cultural practice, it's not really that big of a deal, with some exceptions, obviously. Like if it's, genital mutilation, obviously that has some other things. But if it's basically the songs and dances we have when we have marriages, I think we're not causing any serious harm.
Sure. I could say, yeah. I mean, as far as the faith-based stuff goes, however, I think you've just described ritual more than religion, because religion, as my understanding for at least a significant period of time, is actually the system of worship that surrounds those rituals. And I also don't think that there's a non-harmful version of worship.
I will note that the people who actually study religion seem to have come to the consensus that there is no working definition of religion. So
that's fair enough.
What the subject is even being studied is to be determined.
Or what if God was one of us?
He wouldn't think shit.
So certainly when I was saying there's no non-harmful religion, I was using a definition which included a minimum worship, but probably extended into faith as well.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
Yeah. Then don't forget it. Just kidding. I don't give a fuck. My opinion.
All
doesn't matter.
right. So this one from Jesus Wizard for $5. San Diego area, mid-80s. Summer weather arrived pretty late here this year. Thank you for great content. Get fucked, Jimmy.
You know I will, baby. I hope. Jesus,
right,
I don't know that I'll get fucked. Fucking Christ, it's been so long. I don't know if I remember how.
The Raven 200, Dr. Adair, Gotenks is the fusion of Goten, the youngest son of Goku, and Trunks, the son of Vegeta. Dragon Ball Z is one of my favorite animes. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
How much elbow are you supposed to use in sex? I'm trying to remember.
What?
Somewhere between all of it and both.
Okay. All right. Good. How is between all of it and both implies that some people might have a quantity larger than both.
I don't judge.
All right. Some people got an elbow in their pee-pee. Here we go. Moving on. I've seen the porn. It's that happened.
Yeah. All right.
Exojack
Terrifying.
Studios. Oh, wait. I think it's your turn.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is it Exojack or is it Showjack Studios? $10. Jimmy, how dare you say Dragon Ball is not a good anime? I'm so mad. I'm going to pay you to know how mad I am. In all sincerity, I would love to talk with you guys about this. Go fuck yourself. All right. So if we're going to have all this Dragon Ball Z talk, I'm going to first off admit I have never watched the anime. On the other hand, I know where Goku originally comes from.
Oh. It's probably better than the anime.
Well, it's at least more famous than the anime in terms of cultural content because it's 400 or 500-year-old novel.
Tight.
Oh.
Yeah, Goku can shove
no,
it.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the One Piece show that's coming to Netflix.
Goku can shove it, but at first he can spend 30 fucking episodes charging up, getting ready to shove it.
With one frame of animation.
Yeah, fucking filler garbage bullshit. It's fucking terrible. What a fucking piece of shit anime that was. And if you don't agree with my little fucking mini rant here, you can just fucking super chat more money.
All right. From Anthony Foster, Betty Hill was able to identify as a star system. Verified 40 years old later, she was actually abducted.
Identify a star system. You said identify as a star system.
As a star system.
Hey, you go.
Sorry.
This show's gotten way too woke.
So you've been making this identify as a helicopter for 40 years now? Oh my goodness.
Oh man. God, those are the best memes.
So the claim is that Betty Hill, who was one of the major early abductee people involved, along with her husband, Barney Hill, she claimed to basically produce a star map, and that she said that she drew based on her memory of her encounter. Problem is, the map that she produced is basically just a random set of stars, and if you're just going to randomly connect any stars together, you're going to get something that fits it no matter what. In fact, it was something that, I'm not going to say Carl Sagan made fun of it, but he pointed out how easy it is and how bad of a job she did nonetheless back in 1980 in the show Cosmos. So as far as I'm concerned, this has been debunked before I was even born.
You've not been to every star system. You don't know.
So I've got a conspiracy theory card game here that we played with my son this past weekend, and it actually has a bunch of alien stuff on it. And one of the alien abductions, this woman was abducted, taken to the moon by the aliens, and she had them move or they had her move boxes about.
Hey, so we're actually moving to Phobos. So we're gonna need you.
Did you load up my van?
Yeah, fucking.
It's really hard to find a guy with a pickup truck in our star system, so we thought you could help us out.
Hey, we're as surprised as you. We thought you guys would have the good moon. Did you know there's water on other moons? Like right at the surface. You don't gotta dig shit.
Yeah. All right. So the Justin Oh,
we
my
didn't read
bad.
I
that
don't
last
get to
one.
read the Justin.
I get it back. I'm back.
The Justin says, my best nonsense take. We all make an influence on humanity with every word and gesture we do. Therefore, the world is ruled by everyone collectively. I mean, that's pretty good. So we got the Justin and we got Kathleen.
Nah, Kathleen was way better. I feel like he was trying. So? Justin might have been trying to do a little bit of like maybe it should have sounded like, we make all an influence on humanity with every word and gesture we do. Therefore, the world is ruled by everyone collectively. Do you bloody mind?
Quite a bit, actually.
We'll see who rim jobs who.
Oh boy,
that's a good one.
Oh gosh. Why do I get the feeling that's literally going to be his next tweet? Oh goodness.
I hope so.
All right. From CCH, such a days, Freddie. How can we make it? The theme song, Jimmy. Haha.
Such a days by Freddie. I don't know if I know this one, but if it's copyrighted, we probably can't make it the theme song. That's what it comes to. If we could use copyrighted works, or even if there was a way to easily set up reasonable copyright share with actual bands I give a fuck about, not the current way that's mostly bands I don't give a fuck about. The beginning of every one of my shows would be, my name is Jimmy and you better not wear it out by Green Day. Let's be the fucking best. Anyway. I think we just got copyright struck just now. Or earlier when I sang What If God Was One of Us.
All right.
Yeah, Such a Days is not available for revenue sharing. I just checked it. It's your turn.
Okay. Ember, $5. It's currently cloudy and 69 degrees here in the middle of New York. It's pretty nice. Very good. Very good. Or should I say, nice.
In the chat, Jen just to mention that she heard the hostility theme song on another YouTube video today, which doesn't surprise me because it's everything's sourced from Epidemic Music, which a lot of creators use. But the Sunday show, the old theme song before we changed it literally yesterday, that theme song has begun to be popularly used by a porn website, like a specific category, like those ones where they're like, join us and you'll also get access to Bang Bros and things like that. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, because I did do some investigating when I got the email about it, that it's one mostly focusing on pretty much like significantly older stepfathers with their like freshly legal stepdaughters. The creepiest of porn, which does legally exist. Among the creepiest, I should say. So I'm not sad to see that theme song out, basically, is all I'm saying. Do we do this one? Move on.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Dylan, no, we did this one.
Oh.
We did Ember.
And no one mentioned that it was 69 degrees? Did anyone go nice?
Oh, no, I did.
No,
I said
did.
nice.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got Dylan Fuller, who says, lest the aliens are the angels, but can see them. There's a subset of fanfic ministories called Humans Are Space Orcs. Earth is Space Australia.
Tight.
Interesting.
So, $5 from Emery King. Jimmy, I found this channel through Forrest, but you're my favorite host now. But I can't tell you that because you'd be uncomfortable. Go fuck yourself, Jimothy.
Do you know what's funny is my therapist has been recently telling me to get the fuck over it. The compliments problem I have. It's like, and was phrasing it in these ways of like, basically that I'm the asshole for denying people. She said, like, it'd be like if somebody brought a plant to your house and you don't like plants, but you take the plant and you act like they're giving you a gift. It's a present. Don't shoo away their present. Sure, you can let the plant die, or buy a new one before they visit the next time and tell them it's the same one. But Emery, I'm not as worried about the compliment as I am the lie. I'm nobody's favorite host. The fuck are you talking about? I don't know what this grift is, but I'm worried you're going to try to steal my blood or something. But thanks, Emery, for it. I know you care because you're willing to lie like that.
And aren't the best friends the ones who lie to our faces?
Exactly, to make us feel better.
All right. So $5 from Jason Jack for Jimmy. So Sado Fletchophile, someone who loves the smell of their own farts. I probably mispronounced it, but the concept, unfortunately, is probably real.
It's got to be Sado, right? Because it's got to be You could almost just say flatulophile would make sense enough. But the fact that it is associated with something that brings other people distress or harm is where the Sado part would come in, I would assume.
Yeah. In particular, in that case, you fart, and the fact it makes everyone else uncomfortable is what gives you a smile, rather than a masochist who... Yeah, it would be more masochism of, oh, this hurts me so good.
Yeah. But I mean, we've all hotboxed, right? Sometimes you're like, whoa, the way that felt, I'm going to pull the blanket above my head. I'm just going to conduct a little experiment here. We've all done it. Everyone's done it.
No.
The world.
Sorry. Copyright strike.
Yeah, that's not good for us.
Sweet child, we've lost all the money. Okay. So we got $20 more dollars coming in from Kathleen Moncrief. So I live in a cheap apartment in BYU, and it was so hot we slept with wet towels on us. My roommate had to get up at 5 a.m. and she would bring a fresh wet towel and put it on me. One of the weirdest nice things anyone ever did for me.
At BYU, that story you just told would be considered straight up pornography. Like you'd be kicked out honestly, for telling that.
The craziest thing I've heard come out of like Mormon culture has been that idea of soaking.
Okay, for the record, probably no one has done that. No, okay, I shouldn't say that. Yes, there's like the loopholes and stuff, but the whole idea where it was soaking and then somebody jumps on the bed to provide the motion, and so that's the loophole, because that's when it got famous, was that Vine or not Vine, TikTok, talking about going over that. And even just the soaking itself hasn't happened that much. It was more of a myth in Mormondom than it was a thing people did. Now, it is possible that the myth became real because it was heard about so much. But when I was in college, no one was soaking. We were just fucking and lying about it. Like, that's what
Okay, I actually thank you for that clarification, because I was stating truth in these sorts of things, and I'm gladly corrected. So thank you, Jimmy.
You're welcome. For the record, also, the church does not say that is a loophole. It's sort of like anybody who thinks that's just making it up, like the way Catholics think anal is a loophole. And it's not a loophole. It's not a loophole. It's just a gift.
I would say the higher ups of the opposites, like, no loopholes, no holes of any kind, no holes at all for you kids.
Dude, Mormonism, like when I was in high school, was still teaching that oral sex is sodomy. So yeah, you're not going to get away with soaking. Anyway.
So we got A. Maria who says high of 86 Fahrenheit and humid as fuck in Ohio. Climate change charity stream sometime. I'll accept your pity for living in Ohio, by the way.
We're only going to do charity streams that people would actually contribute to. Nobody gives
Having lived in Ohio, I can agree that it's a place to... Let's put it this way. The majority of astronauts come from Ohio. American astronauts come from Ohio. If that doesn't tell you enough about the state, I don't know what else does.
That's how bad they hate Ohio. They can't get far enough away.
This planet.
Buddy, I went to high school and some of college in Wyoming. Just wanted you to know that.
Fair enough.
I take your Ohio and I raise you one state that's name actually begins with the question, why?
I have it
All right,
on authority that the word Wyoming means don't live here. And my authority is Garfield.
Dude, you know what the fucking crazy thing is if, as you travel around the state, if you just cross the state lines, you recognize that they drew the lines on this is where the weather goes to shit. There were the number of times that we were having blizzards in Cheyenne, but could drive 45 minutes away from Fort Collins and they might have had a light dusting with no wind. It was fucking insane. Literally, like, they should have literally just named it like no one smart would live here. Like, this is the Deadlands. Just don't. The other side of the state's actually pretty dope where Yellowstone is, but fuck that southwest corner or the southeast corner. Yeah, you don't fucking tear. What a garbage state that is. Wyoming fucking sucks. I said it. Come after me.
All right.
We're going to get one letter.
From the only other person left in Ohio or in Wyoming.
Yeah, I was going to say from the sole resident. Between Cheyenne and Laramie, where the college is, University of Wyoming, there's actually a town that brags about, there's a big billboard about it, how they have a population of one person. And a couple of years ago, this Vietnamese guy bought the town and kicked the guy out so he could be the one person who lives there. And it's the weirdest thing. And then he opened like a coffee manufacturing place there, which I assume means it's money laundering of some kind. The whole thing was crazy and very controversial. Anyway.
Oh, wow. Okay. So from the Raven 200, $5, GE. I'm not really optimistic for the live action One Piece, but the casting seems pretty solid. Jimmy, it's okay. You're allowed to be wrong. Dragon Ball Z for life.
I'm excited for the new Avatar Last Airbender series. That looks pretty good.
Yeah. $10 from Zojak Studios, pronounced Zojak. If your problem is the filler, I recommend either reading the manga or watching Kai. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I think it could be argued whether DBZ or JTTW is more culturally relevant at this point.
I assume the manga is even more racist and sexist.
Maybe. And I believe GTTW is for Journey to the West, the Chinese novel that Son Goku is basically deriving his name and some of his characteristics from.
Oh, interesting.
Since the main character in that novel, or I should say a major character in that novel, is the Monkey King, who eventually has the name Sun Wukong and Son Goku. You can see it's pretty obviously derived. He's the Monkey King, and occasionally Goku actually has a tail like a monkey. And of course, all the superpower flying around crazy stuff. That's what Sun Wukong does pretty much every other adventure in the novel.
Look, I'm 33 years old. I've grown up. I've grown out of anime. I just watch hentai now. Thank you. Thank you. John got it.
So, all right. So, $5 from the Justin. If God was one of us, who would it most likely be? Go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Or should I say, God? 95 degrees Fahrenheit, northern Colorado.
It ain't me because I don't love you.
I would say Donald Trump. I mean, he's a shithead. God's a shithead. Seems to match.
I just thought mine was mean and therefore funny.
That's how comedy works. The meaner it is, the funnier it is. Yes.
That's how mine works. Does God love you? Then it ain't me. Well, it's pretty much done here.
Oh, awesome.
Seeing if any more are coming in.
No, I mean, I hope everybody had a great time tonight. I think I've already closed out all of my dialogue stuff that I usually have for notes over here. Y'all should go and check out Dr. Adair's books. All of his books. who won? I guess it was Kathleen. Kathleen, if you want to email me, john@godlessengineering.com, I'll get you that free book in either Audible or Kindle version, either one. You just let me know. John@godlessengineering.com, and you'll get your free book. See, if y'all would have donated, y'all could have fought for a free book or something. I'll have to figure out some way to incentivize.
We got a pretty good number of super chats tonight. We've been here for fucking ever. We got a pretty good number.
Yeah. But anyways, y'all should check out Dr. Aron Adair's books, The Star of Bethlehem and the UFO and Religions book. Alien and religion where two worlds collide. Definitely everybody should check all of that out. It's going to be great. Y'all have a nice night. We will see you heathens tomorrow with Dying Out Loud.
One more popped in.
One more. Dylan Fuller, sorry, one more. There's a 3-hour audio book on YouTube called Why Humans Don't Go to War. That subset of stories is more fun and whimsical, I recommend. Awesome.
Thank you for the recommendation.
All right, well, we got Dying Out Loud tomorrow, and so we will also thank you, Morgan. Thank you for doing the screening and everything. Thank you, mods in the chat. Y'all have an awesome night.
Oh, there's another one. Hang on, what is this?
All right, so last one from Emery King, $5. Don't make me spend more money to defend myself. I'm not a liar, you asshole, Jimmy.